let me make the following announcements. Delegates who are physically in the chamber must connect to the virtual platform as well as insert the cards to register in the system of the chamber and switch off the sound of their gadgets totally. Ensure that the microphones on your systems are muted and remain muted at all times, and use the microphones on the floor. You are also requested to wear a face mask at all times and occupy the seats as marked for the purpose, so that we at all times maintains social distancing. Can I also request that all delegates that are participating in the debate must switch on their videos if they speak or address the chair. And any delegate that want to speak must use the raise your hand function. And participation through the chat room are allowed. Further, let me also announce that there will be no notices of motions or motions without notice today. And before we proceed to the subject for discussion, let me take this opportunity to welcome the ministers, the deputy ministers, the MECs, and all special and permanent delegates to the House. Also, before I continue, I think it is just befitting, since yesterday we've been having debates that are actually related to our children, that we also just acknowledge the fact that we are quite elated that the 4 Muti children were found back without any loss of life and without any actually damage to themselves, besides psychological damage possibly. So let us then now, after that, proceed to the subject for discussion as printed on the order paper, and that is the debate on teenage pregnancy. And before I also continue, let me mention that the chairperson will not be in the House because he is really not well. There is a serious degree of being well, not well, and others that are less serious like myself, but we are here and we can continue with the topic of the day, the debate on teenage pregnancy, taking decisive measures to deal with teenage pregnancy and the rape of young girls in our community. There is the order paper as reflected on the order paper. We will be following the speakers list, and we will thus now call on the Honorable NJ Pahla, the Minister of Health, to open the debate. Honorable Pahla, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of the session of the NCOP and Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. Greetings to all the members of the National Council of Provinces. Greetings to the Chief Whip, Honorable Muhai, colleagues from the Executive of Government who are also attending, the MECs present, our Chair of the Social Services Committee, Honorable Gillion, and all the honorable members and members of the public, good afternoon. We are indeed very honored today to have been invited by the Honorable House of the National Council of Provinces to participate in this very important debate. We thank the office bearers and the Chief Whip for seeing it fit that as a Ministry of Health, we should be participating in this very important debate. Honorable Chair, I'm aware that in part, this debate has been prompted by a report by Statistics South Africa, which was released last Monday on the 11th of November with a title, it's titled Recorded Live Birth Occurrences and Registration 2020.
Just a moment, Honorable Minister. Advocate, can the people in the chamber assist us with the feedback, please? Because there is a lot of feedback. The minister is not very clear. Thank you, Minister. You may continue.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I also was worried about that feedback. Now, honorable members, while there are some problematic and erroneous elaboration on this report, but the gist of the findings do confirm worrying trends in teenage pregnancy, and especially underage pregnancy of girls below the age of 16, 16, which means that this is underage sexual activity, which, as we know in our law, constitutes statutory rape. The question which then arises is whether this underage sexual activities happened between the minors, that is the girls who are under 16 and boys under 16, or some of it was with older men. The most likely occurrence is, we would assume, just knowing the situation in our society, that most likely is that the sexual activity happened with older men. So which raises a lot of responsibility for us as public reps and also as society and also as law enforcement agencies and justice system. There was some erroneous elaboration which was published in the media, and I'm aware that other role players, including amongst ourselves, have referred to some of this, which has been confirmed by Stats SA that it was a wrong inference, where there is an elaboration in some media, which was saying that more than 600 out of the 33,000 or so of under 17-year pregnancies, that about 600 and plus of these were girls below the age of 10, even attributed to between 9 and 10 years. The Stats SA has confirmed that as it is not said, reflected like that in the report. The report says that there is more than 600 girls between age of 10 and 13 who also are within the underage, which has been reported. So there's some confusion, some elaboration by media, which actually gave wrong figures. But nevertheless, the fact of the matter is that this is just the detail, but the gist of the matter, as I said, is the worrying factor. This does not detract from the fact that as a country, we have high levels of teenage and underage pregnancies, which have long-term health, social, and even economic implications for these young people. And that's what we should be worrying about. Now, we know that teenage pregnancy is not a new phenomenon in our society. With the South African Demographic and Health Survey of 2016, finding that 16% of adolescent girls, that is between 15 and 19 years of age, had begun having children. However, we need to restate that unwanted and unplanned pregnancies are not acceptable, and that we need to work tirelessly to prevent these pregnancies so that girls can complete their schooling and avoid having teen moms and teen dads who can not take care of a child because they themselves are still children. An educated girl gives rise to an educated family, an educated community, and also an educated nation. As they say, you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Whilst we acknowledge that our department has an important role to play in reducing teenage pregnancies, we also know that teen pregnancy is not exclusively or mainly a health problem, but a social problem, a social ill that needs all of society to address. It starts at the family and community and society. We're very aware of the need to work across all sectors in an effort to reduce teenage pregnancy. Education and more education can lead to reduction of this problem. Capacitating girl children and not excluding the boy child to know their worth and understand that everything in life should happen at the right time and at the right place is very important. The Department of Health aims to address teenage pregnancy through provision of adolescent and youth health services at all primary health facilities, as well as through the integrated school health program. These efforts are supplemented by partner-funded and partner-initiated initiatives which provide additional services and opportunities to adolescent young persons. Provision of health services to adolescents is guided by the National Adolescent and Youth Health Policy, which was adopted in 2017. The goal of this policy is to provide guidance to departments and organizations working with the Department of Health on how to respond to health needs of young people. That is youngsters between the age of 10 and 24 years, thereby improving the health status of the young people through promoting healthy lifestyles, prevention of illness, and improving healthcare delivery systems by focusing on accessibility, efficiency, quality, and sustainability of adolescent and youth health services. The policy describes a package of interventions that operate within and across 4 domains. 1, at an individual, empowering an individual, empowering household, empowering community, and empowering society broadly. The main strategy for implementation of the National Adolescent and Youth Health Policy within routine healthcare services is to create youth zones at all primary healthcare facilities. Youth zones dedicate specific times to providing a package of healthcare services to young people. Sexual and reproductive health, that is contraceptives, HIV testing, and pregnancy support, as well as screening and treating injuries and minor ailments, and screening for nutrition, mental health, and psychosocial well-being, also dealing with matters of violence and also sexual assault. These are what is the package of some of the package of services provided at the youth-friendly at the youth zones. Now, the youth zones service provision is not limited to biomedical interventions, but includes extramural activities and other social support initiatives. Young people are encouraged to be involved and lead in these non-biomedical interventions that can be accessed in and out of healthcare facilities. Monitoring of youth-friendly services has been integrated into our program of the Ideal Clinic monitoring system, with all primary healthcare facilities being expected to meet the adolescent youth-friendly standard, adolescent and youth-friendly services standards. The National Department has also developed the Integrated National Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Policy and related guidelines aimed at addressing unmet needs for contraceptive services, which focus on key population groups, especially youth and adolescents. A comprehensive sexual and reproductive health and rights training course aimed at strengthening standardization of these services throughout the country includes a module which targets the needs of youth and adolescents. Also, we of course have, as I've alluded to, the Integrated School Health Program, which works with the Department of Basic Education to improve knowledge of issues related to sexual and reproductive health, and to improve access to sexual and reproductive health services for secondary school learners. The comprehensive sexuality education is taught through scripted lessons, and healthcare providers are trained on comprehensive sexuality education to ensure that they provide age-appropriate health education and health services aligned with what learners are taught in school. School health nurses provide some of the sexual and reproductive health services to learners on request and refer them for other services, such as termination of pregnancy or access to contraceptives that are not available at school premises level. In addition, the Department of Basic Education, in partnership with UNAIDS, also with co-sponsors such as UNFPA, UNESCO, UNICEF, and UN Women, will launch the Education Plus initiative that further seeks to accelerate the agenda of the girl child. Understanding that education has a protective factor against vulnerabilities, and the longer the adolescent girl and young women stay in school, the better her chances for realizing her potential and be protected from other vulnerabilities. The Department of Health also works closely with other partner-supported interventions in an effort to address teenage pregnancy. The She Conquers campaign and program is coordinated by the South African National AIDS Council, SANAC, and the Provincial AIDS Councils, together with other government and non-governmental organizations. The campaign aims to address health and related social ills affecting adolescents and youth in communities to restore social norms and values. The current spotlight on teenage pregnancy speaks to the need for multi-sectoral approaches that not only focus on biomedical services, but also the need to intensify implementation of the social and structural barriers that prevent young people from accessing services they need. Systematically addressing the social and structural drivers are of essence to interrupting and breaking the cycle of HIV, TB, sexually transmitted infections amongst adolescent girls and young women. We need to create and expand safe and youth-friendly spaces in communities for adolescent girls and young women to access integrated HIV and sexual and reproductive health services, including contraceptives and condoms. The Department of Health also works with other organizations such as Love Life and Soul City, which support implementation of youth prevention interventions, including prevention of HIV and teenage pregnancies. The Love Life groundbreakers are allocated in selected clinics throughout the country to implement activities such as mobilizing young people to access health services, marketing the Department of Health communication systems, giving sexuality education and life skills programs in a modular approach covering developmental stages, contraceptives, teenage pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections, relationships, abuse, risk behaviors, condom usage, etc., amongst others, supporting communities to organize outreach activities to provide information and comprehensive service provision, participating in clinical and facility committees as voices of young people. These are some of the roles of the Love Life groundbreakers. In partnership with the United States President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, also in short called PEPFAR, the Department of Health also implements the Determined, Resilient, Empowered, AIDS-Free, Mentored, and Safe program, for short called the DREAMS program, that aims to reduce HIV incidence and teenage pregnancy amongst adolescent girls and young women by addressing multiple causes of vulnerabilities and lack of economic empowerment. In addition to PEPFAR, SANAC also coordinates implementation of the Global Fund's Adolescent Girls and Young Women program, which is in line with the National She Conquers campaign. This combination intervention programs provide comprehensive package of health, education, and support services to adolescent girls and young women in and out of school between the ages of 15 and 24, which are aiming at retention of girls in school, decrease HIV, decrease teenage pregnancy, decrease gender-based violence, and increase economic opportunities. Lessons learned from current economic strengthening projects indicate the need to scale up and expand economic strengthening initiatives with a focus on skills, income generation, livelihoods, and support and mentorship. In partnership with the UNFPA, our department has developed a condom communication strategy with the aim of promoting condom usage. Male and female condoms have been repackaged to be more appealing to young women and young men. Young people are also encouraged to access factual health information through the Be Wise Mobi site, which is also a strategy to reach out to the young people, also including information about COVID-19. As noted earlier, we're also very aware of the need to work across all sectors in an effort to reduce teenage pregnancy. I've outlined how we work with the Department of Basic Education, Social Development in implementing the integrated school health programs. We are also through the Department of Women, Youth, and People Living with Disability, establishing closer links with other departments such as Justice and sections of the Social Development that work with mandatory reporting of child abuse and child protection in order to ensure that the correct laws, regulations, and policies are implemented in cases of teenage pregnancies, especially with regards to very young girls and underage girls. Acknowledging the interlinking nature of gender-based violence and HIV, SANAC and the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disabilities have partnered and translated the National Strategic Plan of the SANAC partners into a developed and interlinkages implementation framework. The framework serves as multi-sectoral, coherent implementation and programming framework to ensure a coordinated national response to HIV and GBVF. It aligns and synergizes programs and services for effective response to GBVF in context of HIV and deal with intersecting inequalities. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, we would therefore like to commit ourselves to working with all stakeholders to reduce the number of teenage pregnancies and to allow young women to complete their schooling and to give them the best chance of reaching their full potential, living fulfilling lives and becoming productive members and leaders of society. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for the presentation. We will now give to Honorable Gillian, Chairperson of the Select Committee, to continue with the debate.
Honorable Chairperson, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, MECs, delegates of the NCOP, fellow South Africans. Allow me to painfully remind this August House today, 32 years ago, of how apartheid killed a fearless young revolutionary, an MK commander at the age of 20 years, Anton Franz, whose life was taken through what is remembered today as a Battle of Athlone. When more than 7 hours gun battle between Anton Franz and the apartheid security forces. To the family and comrades of Comrade Anton, we say, a luta continua. Our struggle will be less than powerful than our national and social emancipation can never be complete if we continue to treat the women of our country as dependent minors and objects of one form of exploitation or another. Certainly, no longer should it be that a woman's place is in the kitchen. In our beleaguered country, the woman's place is in the platform and the battlefront of struggle. Close quote. Honorable Chairperson, this is the position of the ANC, which was articulated by the 9th President of the ANC, the late Comrade Oliver Tambo, in the January 8th statement of 1984, which was under the theme, the Year of Women. The struggle against apartheid was raging and intensifying as the UDF and other sections under the guidance of the liberation movement were pushing for the birth of a non-racial, non-sexist, and a democratic and prosperous South Africa. The ANC has always understood that the liberation of South Africa will be incomplete without the liberation of women from the shackles of patriarchy and class super-exploitation. Embedded within the physique of apartheid, colonialism, and its continuing legacy is a notion that relegates women into non-economic entities and insists in diminishing their role and contribution to the social and economic value. This is a notion that the liberation movement has always sought to challenge both theoretically and in practice. The ANC and its Women's League has always advocated for women to be given more meaningful roles in the government and the economic decisions-making structures. This is one of the achievements of the past 27 years in democracy, for there are few countries in this world who have made advances in these areas as we have in such a small space of time. However, despite of this progress, women continue to bear the brunt of the exploitation that continues under the post-apartheid society, and every contradiction we can discuss in whatever context. We can never shy away from the reality that women are the most affected. For example, when talking employment, women are the most affected according to Stats SA. Over the period between 2016 and 2020, the unemployment rate in South Africa had increased, dropping only in the second quarter of 2020. It was continuously higher among women than it was among men, reaching approximately 34.3% of the total labor force during the fourth quarter of 2020. If we are to discuss rape and gender-based violence, we find that most victims are women. The latest crime stats reveal that from a sample of 5,439 rape cases, 3,766 of these incidences took place at the home of the victims of the homes of the rapists. So these are domestic cases. Chairperson and honorable members, we need to make a proper analysis of the conditions which face women, and we need to respond to the contradictions, not only by promulgating legislation, but we also need to put in the necessary socio-political work to respond in a decisive manner. The reality is that our society, which has a history of violence and oppression, still has elements which continue to reproduce the patriarchal tendencies that were interlinked to the race and class oppression. We are engaged in the process of transforming society from a backward colonial and patriarchal system to a society found in the values of non-racialism, non-sexism, and democracy. In the resurgence in violence and femicide is also a reaction from the physique of patriarchy, sensing that its power to assert systemic domination and privilege over women is challenged through the various interventions which have been made to empower women. The inclination is to resort to violence. There is a plethora of factors which drives and sustains gender-based violence, such as economic inequalities to the disadvantage of women and the lack of education and skilling opportunities for women. These are factors which we all are engaged in dealing with. However, the major fact is at the social level, where men are socialized to believe that they have the power and authority to exercise control and objectivity the bodies of women. The women's movement and the feminists in the ANC and our country have characterized this as rape culture, where society is generally taught that men should have entitlement to objectify and exercise control over the bodies of women. The ANC and the Women's League believe that the struggle against patriarchy and its manifestation of rape culture must be intensified at an ideological level in all sides of struggle, whether it is in education syllabus, sports, arts and culture, and other corridors of society where people are engaged in learning and relearning. We must continue building the women's movement that is mobilizing across all sectors of society and ensure that young boys and girls grow up understanding the important role that women play in all facets of life, be it the liberation struggle, development, and in our own households. Honorable members, the gender question is very complex, and over the years, as the struggle has been waging on it, has evolved and new concepts which require us to relearn have been added to the discourse. In the gender struggles of today, we also talk of the LGBTQIA+ community. This also links to the gender-based violence, as members of the LGBTQIA+ are also victims of horrendous crimes and victimization. We see that they are subjected to hate crimes, corrective rape, and other forms of discrimination, which belongs to the old apartheid colonial area. We must remind each other, that liberation will not be complete if there's a section in our society that must live in fear of violence or being discriminated. And so we must rise and stand in solidarity with the Pride movement and say, "Your lives matter." Honorable members, the COVID-19 global pandemic and its devastating effects have had a serious impact, not only in our economy and social discourse, but it has also been significantly devastating in the lives of the youth and women, as many of them have become socially isolated, anxious, and depressed. The prevalence of gender-based violence and femicide also dramatically increased. Malnutrition became rife as people struggled to access food, lack of access to sexual health and reproductive services, and those who were previously actively looking for employment could no longer do so. And youth-owned businesses suffered and some were closed down. There's no doubt that the recent July unrest also will contribute to the state of degeneration, and we will be plunged deeper into the pits of unemployment, poverty, and inequalities. It is positive that government has adopted the National Youth Policy 2020 till 2030 that must decisively respond to some of these issues. The overarching goal of the NYP 2030 is to ensure that we harness the energies of young people so that they become responsible and contributing members of the communities. The purpose of the NYP is to, among other things, to integrate youth development into the mainstream of policies, programs, and the national budget, facilitate young people's smooth transition into independence, inculcate and strengthen the culture of patriotism amongst young people. The appointment of the NYDA board, led by two incredible, dynamic, and very talented young women, is a welcome development. The NYDA must be positioned to play a more strategic role, which empowers the youth through implementation of programs that empower youth enterprises, community initiatives, and contribute to sharpening policy orientation of government by bringing new paradigms from their own experience. Finally, Honorable Chairperson and members, let me conclude with a quote from Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, who said, open quote, if you are to free yourselves, you must break the chains of oppression yourselves. Only then can we express our dignity. Only when we have liberated ourselves can we cooperate with other groups. Any exceptions of humiliation, indignity, or insult is acceptance of inferiority, close quotes. The women in the liberation movement and other progressive sections are engaged in a process of social change, and we fully understand that midwifing for the birth of a non-racist, non-sexist, and a democratic society will not be a bed of roses or a dinner party. It will be a process of struggle. We will continue to state the case just as generations before us did during the heat of the struggle against colonialism and apartheid, that the struggle of total emancipation would be incomplete without the emancipation of women. A luta continua. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gillian.
Malibongwe.
We will now call on the Honorable Christians to continue the debate. Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Members. Our government continues to crumble under the pressure of its inability to address social problems that hamper the overall sustainability of resources, particularly root out evils such as teenage pregnancy and gender-based violence that continue to engulf the future of our youth and ultimately our country. Teenage pregnancy is an indicator of the social and economic disadvantages, such as poor education and even poorer living conditions, which our youth are currently battling. The vulnerable are fighting wars against an uncaring government that continues to compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own selfish needs. They are fighting against a government that prioritizes emptying the coffers before they are voted out of power. They are fighting against a government that does not see them as the leaders of tomorrow, instead trampling on their last hope for a better future. Yes, the unexpected arrival of the coronavirus in 2019 further stalled progress, but we are nearing the close of the second year with this disease looming over the country. And it is long overdue for the government to reprioritize its focus and address the social ills of the day. According to the South African Medical Research Council, our country recorded increased rates of teenage pregnancies, exacerbated by gender-based violence in some cases, between 2018 and 2019 and during the COVID-19 pandemic. It became even more difficult to access contraceptives during the lockdown period, and even more difficult for SAPS to get hold of the devastation gender-based violence left in their wake. This inaccessibility speaks volumes of the injustices our women and children have to deal with figures of teenage pregnancy ranging from 11% in urban areas and 19% in rural areas. A total of 16% of young women aged 15 to 19 became young mothers even before the pandemic. Chairperson, earlier this year, the Department of Basic Education told Parliament that nearly 130,000 babies were delivered to girls aged 10 to 19 in South African public health facilities in 2019 and 2020. This figure increased drastically to 136,386 deliveries for this same age group. More than 600 girls aged 9 and 10 gave birth in South Africa in 2020. This is concerning and extremely alarming. While our youth have to deal with an array of alienating factors determining their futures, sexual abuse and violence against children under the age of 18 is one of the main contributors to teenage pregnancies. Another contributor is the lack of support for victims and young girls from the healthcare sector in terms of providing contraceptives as well as medical advice. The shortfalls in our healthcare system are posing grave risks for our overall young well-being of women and children. Additionally, of continued concern is the backlog in DNA cases, which continues to rise, many of these possibly providing key evidence in rape cases across the country. Our youth are struggling to get the necessary emotional, educational, and medical support, which further isolates them from society. This in turn gives birth to future generations where poverty is more rife and the possibility of being economically active in society is further limited. The knock-on effect of teenage pregnancy is limitless and damning to overall functioning of society as we know it. Deputy Chairperson, we need to take control of this double pandemic and address the gaps in our social, medical, and educational sector before we completely use young girls, young women, and other vulnerable members of society to the social ills they have to battle on their own. Prioritize the provision of contraceptives and teach our youth the proper use of each one. Remove the stigma and support young boys and girls in local clinics and hospitals with privacy and the necessary education on contraceptives and the use thereof. Educate our youth in schools and do not shy away from building openness with them. It can only ever create trust with a consortium of society that already feel that they are battling life on their own. Deputy Chairperson, should we all make supporting and educating a child our priority, we will see fewer school dropouts as a result of teenage pregnancy and the other social ills faced by our young people in this country. Should we all remove the stigma of supporting a victim of gender-based violence, then we will have more empowered survivors and give rise to stronger generations. But the time is now, and our youth should not wait any longer. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Christians. I will now call on the Deputy Minister, Honorable Castle Matale, to continue the debate. But I think for the record, the Honorable Minister reported on the erroneous reporting on the issue of pregnancy of 9 to 10 years. I just want members to take that into account as they continue with the debate. Honorable Castle Matale.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to members of the NCOP, Deputy Ministers and Deputy Ministers. My apologies to ministers. I erroneously thought I'm with my colleagues here, but I should have started acknowledging yourselves. Ministers and all members who are present here, good afternoon to you all. It takes a village to raise a child. This is an old African proverb that resonates more with us today than it ever did before, as we are to confront head-on the scourge of teenage pregnancy and all its causes and manifestations. The current high numbers of teenage pregnancy are alarmingly worrying and are a reflection of how society is failing young girls. We have seen over 36,000 children being delivered by girls aged between 10 and 19 years of age within the first quarter of this year alone. These numbers are incredibly disheartening and troubling and cannot be swept under the carpet. The scourge of teenage pregnancy is a serious social and health problem, and the Honorable Minister Pasha has outlined the serious health, emotional, and physical effects this poses to both the young mother and her child. With this debate, while this debate will demonstrate the integrated social campaigns to prevent teenage pregnancy, allow me to take this House through some of the legislative and enforcement aspect of it. We should not even be discussing pregnancy of any child under the age of 12 years, as in terms of our common law, girls under the age cannot legally consent to sexual intercourse. It will always be rape, irrespective of circumstances. The challenge we have is that families chose not to report such matters and opt to sweep them under the carpet for fear of being judged and shunned by others. The rest of the community members merely turn a blind eye. This has to come to an end. We must all speak up and put an end to this scourge, Honorable Chairperson. Post-1994, South Africa adopted one of the most progressive constitutions which sought to protect the human rights of all. We further ensured that we create a conducive legislative framework to give effect to the Constitution's vision. However, as we are progressing to solidify our hard-won freedom and democracy, we have realized with concern the increasing statistics of gender-based violence, in particular child rape and child pornography, amongst others. It has thus become vividly clear to us as the Ministry of Police and the ANC-led government as a whole that more needs to be done to consolidate our gains of the past 25 years, as informed both by our lessons and mistakes. One paramount lesson being that we need to work even closer together as government, civil society, NGOs, and the private sector. We must pull all our resources together to put an end to all forms of GBV, including rape against children. We cannot continue to subject our children to such brutality. Children should be protected at all costs. As Minister Bekele usually says, rape is worse than murder for the victims, as they have to live with the scars their whole lives, and sometimes they have to live with their violators. Rape has numerous other consequences that can last a lifetime and span generations, with serious adverse effects on health, education, employment, crime, and the economic well-being of individuals, families, and communities. It can therefore never be okay for families to slaughter a goat or a sheep to cleanse the family name when child is raped by an uncle, brother, or neighbor. Action must be taken. Communities must speak up and call out this predatory criminal behavior. We must always remember that my child is your child. I repeat, children should be protected at all costs. The protection has to come from decisive action from all spheres of government and civil society working together in the interest of our young girls. It is therefore building safer communities and assisting and supporting victims of sexual violence, starting at home, that will achieve this protection. Further, when minor victims are supported and such crimes are reported, the criminal justice system should not fail them. Chairperson, guided by the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, we as the South African Police Service are continuing to improve our services to victims of GBV to ensure that perpetrators don't go unpunished. Yes, we have had numerous challenges, but we are working on them. The National Strategic Plan on GBV is aimed at strengthening our fight against the scourge of GBV and protecting those most vulnerable in our society and communities. The NSP on GBV comprises of 6 strategic pillars, namely accountability, coordination, and leadership, prevention and rebuilding social cohesion, justice, safety, and protection, response, care, support, and healing, economic power, and research and information management. These 6 pillars, subsequent to the approval of the strategy, SAPS has since established the National GBV Steering Committee and completed the National GBV Action Plan outlining SAPS priorities. We have also established different mechanisms and interventions to give effect to the NSP on GBV and to deal with the challenges that we have encountered in the past months. Honorable members, it is during this administration that the gender-based violence desk have been established at identified police stations across the country, and we are still working on expanding these services. We have launched and implemented a 6-point plan to ensure that victims of this crime, including minors, are treated with the utmost care and professionalism when in the hands of officers in blue. The plan is to ensure that all police stations across the country have dedicated officers manning the GBV desks. To date, 137 GBV desks have been established and are functional. Chairperson, as things stand, all police stations have victim-friendly rooms or alternative facilities to ensure proper handling of domestic violence and gender-based violence and other sexual crimes cases. In our response to sexual crimes committed against minors, the SAPS Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit has been allocated additional human resources during the past financial year to deal with the growing caseload. Our officers at stations are being trained to provide minor victims with a victim-centered service. Victims who are minors are referred to health facilities for medical assistance and to safe care centers. Traumatized victims are further referred for psychosocial services. Provincial GBV committees have been put in place to ensure coordination and compliance. Police stations are the first point of call for the hundreds and thousands of victims of crimes. It is also through the work of this administration that all police stations across the country have access to DNA collection kits, commonly known as rape kits, used to collect DNA evidence from victims of sexual crimes. The contract to provide these essential kits is in place and stocks at station is being replenished on a continuous basis. In the same breath, allow me to expand on the progress that has been made to deal with the DNA backlog at our forensic laboratory services. We are aware that the backlog at our forensic services laboratories threaten to hold the criminal justice system at ransom. I'm happy to update this House that a turnaround plan has been put in place and is in full swing to ensure that our laboratories are stocked with the required consumables. The plan to repair or replace machines necessary to process the specimen has been done and is being implemented. Most importantly, the personnel to ensure the effectiveness of the whole value chain of the DNA processing system has been augmented in certain areas and are at work putting in the hours to turn things around. And also speak, Chairperson, the ring fence and the backlog on DNA is starting to go down because of the plans that we have put in place. It is no longer the case of the backlog going the other direction, but not downwards. We are confident that we will overcome the challenges that have been there. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not out of the woods yet when it comes to DNA backlog, but we are certain certainly no longer lost and walking around in circles hoping to find out our way out. The SAPS has a plan, and this plan is working, and its result will soon be evident. Honorable members, allow me to conclude by emphasizing this call. Children should not be having children. Children should be protected from sexual predators in all corners of our communities. Children must be protected at all costs by all of us. Every child is your child. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister Matale. We will now call on Honorable Silindile Lutuli, and after that, the House Chairperson will take over the presiding of the.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson, and greetings to everyone. Ikakhulukazi kubabukeli emakhaya. South Africa recorded an increased number of teenage pregnancy in the year 2018-2019, and more recently during the COVID-19 pandemic period. Mothers aged between the age of 10 and 19 years account for almost 10% of birth in South Africa, with children bearing children. Sihlalo. Nangesikhathi lubhubhane lungakafiki, iningizimu Afrika ibihlezi ku 16% wabantwana abathola abantwana. Futhi lokhu kutholakala kuyinkinga kakhulu njengoba nobaba babantwana bengaziwa ukuthi bawobani. Reason for the high volume of teenage pregnancy are often as a result of rape, child abuse, and gender-based violence. Isikhathi esiningi lamacala okunyukubezwa ngokucansi akabikho emaphoyiseni ngenxa yokuthi lamantombazana asaba ukucwaswa emphakathini aphuma kuwona, lokho okwenza ukuthi bazithole sebenezifo zocansi kanye nesandulela ngculazi. Lokho okwenza ukuthi bangakwazi nanokuthi baqhubeke nokufunda. Lokho kuba nemiphumela engemihle ngokuhamba kwesikhathi ezimpilweni zabantu besifazane abasebancane, okwenza babe nokwecwaswa emphakathini baze bayeke isikole nokuba nzima ukuthola imisebenzi ngokuhamba kwesikhathi. Kwezinye izikhathi kutholakala ukuthi lokukhulelwa kwamantombazane asemancane kungenxa yokunyukubezwa ngokocansi ngamadoda amadala asuke ebathembisa izimali, izipho kanye nokudla ngenxa azi ukuthi baphuma enhluphekweni. However, in many cases, the relationship can be characterized as rape, for it is against the law for anyone to have sex with someone who is under the age of 16. The law further states that no child under the age of 12 years can consent to sex. Any sexual act with a child under the age of 12 years is statutory rape or sexual assault. However, under the watch of the ruling party, such crimes continue to go by unpunished in our society. Poverty also increased the opportunities for sexual abuse, where women and children may suffer sexual abuse and unequal power relations in situations where a man is a breadwinner. At times, teenagers are forced to drop out of school at a young age to help the family with the income because of poverty. To earn an income, these girls have to leave their homes and earn a living in the streets as prostitutes, which fuels the high rate of teenage pregnancy and STIs. Teenagers who are born and have grown up into a circle of poverty are forced into such position as a way of compensating the salaries and social grants of their parents. This ultimately leads to a lack of schooling and decrease in employment opportunities. The state of our healthcare system is also contributing to a growing of teenage pregnancy, for contraceptions are often not easily accessible to our youth. Abahlengikazi emtholampilo abanaso isineke kulabantwana abasebancane. Ubathola bebabuza imibuzo enjengokuthi umncane kangaka usuqomile, usuyalala.
lokho okwenza ukuthi abantwana bangaphinde babuye beze kulo mtholampilo ngoba basuke bethola ukuphoxeka. School-based intervention are also needed to prevent sexual violence and raise awareness about teenage sexual and reproductive health and rights. Yet the Department of Basic Education lacks plan for an intense sexual education program in our schools. Teenagers who falls pregnant under the age of 18 are unlikely to return to school because they bear the responsibility of having to look after their babies and only return to school when the child is old. Lokho kwenza bangakwazi ukufunda nokubhala ngenxa yokuyeka isikole besebancane. Some teenagers may resort to abortion after finding out that they are pregnant. In many cases, teenagers perform illegal abortion, which are likely to cause medical problems in future. Infections, breast cancer, and infertility. Illegal abortion often comes with complications leading to complications and death among young people. For teenagers are more likely than older women to attempt dangerous abortion or suffer damage in the birth process that renders them infertile or endangers their lives. In order to understand why teenagers become pregnant and what can be done to prevent this, teenage sexuality needs to be explored in many details. The power imbalance between men and women at both society and personal level also needs to be looked at. A shift in attitude of society as a whole is needed. But most importantly, a chairperson, a shift in leadership in governance is needed, as the ruling party has demonstrated time and time again that they lack the kind of leadership which is required to deal with society's numerous challenges. In my closing, chairperson, it is only through the economic freedom fighters. It is only through the economic freedom fighters where solutions in society ills can be addressed and managed. I thank you.
Thanks very much, Honorable Lutuli. The next speaker is Honorable S.M. Luciti, Eastern Cape MEC, Social Development. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And greetings to the Honorable Deputy Chairperson, to the Presidium, the Executive, the Honorable members, our social partners, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all today. It is again an honor and a privilege to stand in this house on behalf of the Eastern Cape government to reflect on this important social issue of teenage pregnancy and how we can collectively take decisive measures to deal with it and the rape of our young girls in our communities. Globally, it is estimated that 21 million girls aged between 15 to 19 years in developing countries become pregnant, and that about 12 million of them give birth every year. Moreover, at least 777,000 girls under 15 give birth every year. The issue of teenage pregnancy and rape is slowly becoming a pandemic in our country. In South Africa, between April 2020 and March 2021, it is estimated that roughly 30% of teenage girls between 10 and 19 years old fell pregnant, and the province of the Eastern Cape reported to be amongst the top 3 provinces with high teenage pregnancy prevalence at 17.1%. Now, while it is understood that teenage pregnancy is a global problem and it affects all classes, there is an appreciation that there are key social factors which drive and contribute to this phenomenon. Research points out that teenage pregnancies are more likely to occur in marginalized communities, commonly driven by poverty and lack of education and employment opportunities. Given the deep inequality and unevenness of our country's socio-economic structure, it is perhaps essential to ensure that rural and peri-rural communities are prioritized by our interventions. Moreover, it is important to note that there are other key social factors which also contribute to the challenge. And these include backward social norms, risky sexual behavior, the scourge of gender-based violence, and in particular, sexual violence to young women and the impact of COVID-19 to social life. Indeed, there is a general appreciation that while teenage pregnancy rates were already relatively high in the country, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic may have also contributed to the increased numbers owing to temporary closures of schools, the impact of increased GBVF incidences, and difficulties of accessing contraceptives. A specialist scientist, Dr. Kim Jonas at the South African Medical Research Council, has recently shared that 70% of teenage pregnancies during the COVID pandemic were linked to risky behaviors, and some as a result of rape. Risky behaviors are actions that potentially expose young people to harm or significant risk of harm, which will prevent them from reaching their full potential. Risky sexual behavior in particular can have life-threatening consequences for young people. Some of these risky behaviors include starting to have sexual intercourse at a younger age without the necessary knowledge and guidance. Also, statistically, these people are more likely to have many and multiple sexual partners and are less likely to use contraceptives the first time they have sexual intercourse. This is linked with the challenge of alcohol and substance abuse, particularly amongst teenagers. We believe that an evidence-based, systematic, and an integrated consideration of all these factors and how they influence each other on the ground should set the basis of our interventions as government and our social partners. In this regard, the Department of Social Development insists that the basis of our intervention must be family-based, because it is empowered families that constitute the basis of support and protection of vulnerable groups, which include young girls. And if we utilize family units as basis of our interventions, that will help to build resilient communities. Honorable members, families constitute a core feature in the understanding of social behavior in every society. They are a central location where change can be effected, that which influences significant transformations in all parts of society. Through all these interventions cited above, the Department of Social Development thus helps to build families that function well and communities that care for, protect, and develop children appropriately. Honorable members, as part of our intervention as the Department of Social Development in the Eastern Cape, we have recently launched a compendium of social behavioral change programs that constitute a set of structured, interactive, evidence-based interventions that are designed to address risky behavior and harmful social norms to affect change to the individual, the community, and societal level. These social behavioral change interventions are designed to be implemented within community settings, in group settings, and also on an individual basis. There are two critical social behavioral change programs contained in our compendium: the You Only Live Once, our YOLO program, and the CHOMI program. These programs focus on girls and women, boys and men within their families. It is envisaged that the programs focusing on men and boys can have a positive impact on the lives of women and girls, but also for the lives of men and boys. YOLO targets young people between the age of 15 and 24 under the tagline, "It's my life, it's my choice, and I chose to behave responsibly." The YOLO program aims to build young people's self-esteem, their confidence, self-efficiency, and resilience to deal with adverse situations. The CHOMI program targets children under the tagline, "Invest in my future, protect me today." And it aims to generate knowledge, develop skills, and empower children to make informed choices to reduce HIV infections, substance abuse, and to prevent teenage pregnancy through programs such as indigenous games and other activities. In partnership with the UNFPA and UNICEF, the government of South Africa and that of Canada is implementing a program of empowering women and girls to realize their sexual and reproductive health and rights. This program covers the period of 2019 to 2023, focusing on our Nelson Mandela Metro and the Alfonso district in the province. This program focuses on strengthening the district level institutions and communities in enabling adolescent girls and young women to realize their sexual reproductive health and rights while eradicating gender-based violence. Given that this is likely to exert undue anxiety as a result of the overpowering effects teenage pregnancy may have on the child, leading to their ability to cope and function under the circumstances, as a department, we provide a comprehensive range of psychosocial support services to affected teenagers and their families. These services are aimed and meant to strengthen self-esteem, both on the family and that of a teenager in the long run, towards building this family's resilience. Parenting skills development programs are also offered to improve and ensure positive parenting skills. These interventions are aimed to support and develop positive parenting by developing the capacity of parents to act in the best interest of the child, strengthening positive relationships within the family, and improving caregiving capacity. Through this program, honorable members, young people are realizing their rights to make informed choices about their bodies, their own lives, and the world that they live in is a matter of justice and a driver of lifetime returns. Honorable members, as we have said, as the Eastern Cape government, we acknowledge that several multi-part social ills continue to confront our province and the country in general.
Yes, conclude, honorable member. Conclude, please.
In the same vein, the scourge of GBV has escalated. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, the Eastern Cape government will launch the Eastern Cape Provincial GBF strategy on the 25th of November, and this strategy constitutes a renewed strategy relating to the prevention of gender-based violence and the care of its victims and survivors and the response to the incidences of gender-based violence. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable member. The next speaker is Honorable Rama Tuba, MEC of Limpopo Social Health Department. Honorable Rama Tuba, MEC of Limpopo of Health Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister of Health, and all Deputy Minister of Police, all other ministers and deputy ministers who are here, colleagues from different provinces, honorable members of the House, ladies and gentlemen. Let me also start by appreciating this opportunity that this August House has given us as Limpopo province to debate on this matter that is very critical and crucial to our society. As President Oliver Tambo has once said, that a nation that doesn't look after its children or its youth does not necessarily deserve a future. And I believe as South Africans, we do deserve a future. That is why it is very critical for us to have this particular debate on the 17th of November, the day wherein globally we are commemorating the World Premature Day. This is a way in health activists across the globe, we look into how can we educate and support mothers to be able to make sure that even a premature baby, it's given a chance. And one of the major causes of premature babies is teenage mothers. And we believe that if we are to win this battle against teenage pregnancy, we are also going to win a number of other challenges. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Honorable Chair, if there's some disturbance there. Honorable Chair, I hope I'm audible now. I must indicate that teenage pregnancy is a societal problem with many factors contributing and necessitating a multi-sectoral approach. This is a pregnancy that is occurring amongst adolescent girls between ages of 10 and 9 years, as a result of the unprotected sex. The circumstances around the sexual encounter may vary greatly from experimentation by our teenagers amongst their peers to coercion with great concerns about statutory rape. Teenage pregnancy is only determined by the age of the girl and not that of a man. And unfortunately, it does not matter how old the man is. Teenage pregnancy globally, I think that the speakers have already indicated that it's estimated at 21 million girls between age 15 and 19 in the developing countries, which is a worrying factor. And 12 million of those are giving birth each year. And the difference is accounted for by the fact that some of these pregnancies end up with miscarriage, whether spontaneous or induced. Others is through termination, whether legal or illegal. And of course, unbooked home deliveries. Some are hidden or concealed. Less of a challenge in high-income countries with high levels of education and easy access to information and healthcare services. That is where the inequality continue to demonstrate itself. In the sub-Saharan Africa, the studies have shown that as high as 35% of these teenage pregnancies are unplanned, unwanted, and untimed, and that the teenagers' relationships were unstable. Some are related to cultural influences, proving maturity or your womanhood. Only about 2/3 of these unintended pregnancies end up in childbirth, while a third results in mainly unsafe abortion. In sub-Saharan Africa, one biggest risk factors in early childbearing is increased vulnerability to HIV and AIDS and other sexual transmitted infections. Some of the causes of teenage pregnancy include, amongst others, the poor educational training or attainment, cultural or religious beliefs, the barriers, for instance, accessing contraceptives among our facility. Gender-based violence also play a role in the early marriages that we've seen in terms of cultural belief, where girl child is forced into marriage, and most importantly, poverty. There are also contributing factors which are societal issues and have got their own social dynamics. For instance, access to social network resources. Here you have low self-esteem at an individual level and the prior exposures within the family and community being normalized. My mother had me as a teenager. I will have my child as a teenager. My child will have a child as a teenager. And we think it is time that we needed to break that cycle to say, if my mother had me as a teenager, I need to be able to learn and be able to have a child when I am ready psychologically can be a mother. Peer pressure is also another societal factor that is contributing towards teenage pregnancy, where at family level, we find that there is no open communication about sexual and reproductive health amongst us as our parents, especially those of us in rural provinces where it is a taboo to discuss sexual issues with your child, with your girl child. Role modeling within the family, as I've already indicated, if a child in a family, the first girl graduate without having a child, chances are all the others coming after would follow suit. But if the first one have a child, the other, all of them will also follow suit. And also poor active parenting. This is where we need to empower our community, especially mothers, to be there and fathers be there. A girl child needs a father also, so that a father must be a father figure to their child. That the girl child must not look for an older man because they are looking for a father figure who end up implementing them. Sexual attitudes also at community level. This is acceptable, an attitude towards teenage pregnancy is normal. If the neighbor child has got a child and is getting a grant, why can't mine also have the same? And also, statutory rape is not seen as a crime among some of our communities, where when a girl child, 15 years, sleep with a man, and the two families will have to talk. If it means damage must be paid, damage get to be paid. Statutory rape must be treated as a crime, and there's nothing about to negotiate or discuss. It becomes a police issue. And also accessibility to contraceptives. We've seen the low access of condoms here, also a contraceptive, again, where during the COVID-19 pandemic, most of our facilities, because globally and even in our country, rate, which was the commonly preferred form of contraceptives amongst the teenagers, the 2 months injectable was not available. And many of them are reluctant to use the longer acting, for instance, your implants, your Implanol, or your IUCDs or your Depo-Provera, because there is a belief amongst the community that when you use these long-acting contraceptives, chances are you might have difficulties when you want to conceive, for you to conceive. So we need to make sure that contraceptives that are that community or young girls have got confident on continue to be available. Unemployment, where girl child is disempowered and cannot negotiate safe sex as an option. Poverty, we've seen it as a serious challenge, where in the transactional sex in exchange for goods, food, and material things. And in that, there is no way a girl child, when is sleeping with a sugar daddy, which they call blessers, will not be able to negotiate a utilization of contraceptives, because there is a power struggle there. The old man wants sex and he doesn't care whether there is a protection or not. So we need to work on those issues like alcohol abuse, which are risky in terms of sexual behavior, the lack of information, which many speakers have spoken about, and societal attitude towards teenage pregnancy, that we should not accept teenage pregnancy. The problem that we are having is that most of our children, of course, spend their lives in community, in schools, and of course they respond to what they are exposed to, whether it's in their homes, in the community, or at school. Hence, demand creation and empowerment on prevention, for instance, in terms of information sharing, condom availability, and contraceptives, and early detection needs to be strengthened at community home and also at school level. Then the girls must also be treated with respect. And this affects especially those of us who work within the healthcare setting. We have to start educating our nurses and all our healthcare workers in the primary healthcare setting to begin to treat our girl child with respect. When a child visits the clinic for sexual and reproductive healthcare service, let's not shame them to say you are just 15, are you already engaged in sexual activity? Let's use that as an opportunity to mentor the child and so that they can have confidence in us, they can trust our system. They no longer trust our system, and it cuts across because we become judgmental. And this is one of the areas which we should be teaching our healthcare workers from their medical school or nursing school to understand that indeed, if we do not have a welcoming attitude, we are going to lose this girl child towards pregnancy. How we measure, Honorable Speaker, the extent of this program? Usually, unfortunately, the only reports that we will have will be the rate of those delivery in facilities among the 10 to 19 years. But however, we are not able to track other teenagers who would have either delivered at home, some would have had miscarriages or termination of pregnancy. As such, if we say in Limpopo province, for instance, because we are here on behalf of the Limpopo government, we can indicate to you to say in the financial year 2020-2021, a total delivery of between 15 to 19 years at facility were 18,893, and a total of 10 to 14 years in the facilities were 512. But then that is excluding those that have indicated might have delivered at home, some might have terminated, meaning the number is far much more than the 19,000 that is reflected as the number of teenagers that are delivering. Ebembe district, it's leading in this sketch at 5,284 and 164 of those who are 10 to 14, followed by Mupani district at 4,400, then a Capricorn district at 3,600, then Skukune, and the last it's Waterberg. Of course, Waterberg with 2,279 could be as a result of the population that is very low. But we are worried about mostly our rural province, which is a district which is Vembe and Mupani, which account for 51% of the burden of teenage pregnancy in the province. These two districts also account for 61% of all deliveries that are between 10 to 14 years. So there is a strong cultural permissibility factor in these two districts, which makes intervention becomes less effective. So the fight against teenage pregnancy, Honorable Chair, requires a layered approach with multi-sectoral intervention that are cultural, sensitive, and responsive to material conditions on the ground. If you look at Capricorn District, because our target was supposed to be below 12.5%, we, Globerg, for instance, municipality, where more offense, parents are migrant workers and children are left home alone, unsupervised, their percentage is at 14.9%. If you go and look at Polokwane, because it's in the cities in town, it's at 11.3%. The trend continues because if you go to Mopani, you go to Greater Guyana, where a lot of cultural beliefs and one needs to prove of one's fertility amongst the villagers. It is acceptable. If you look at Greater Litawa, those are rural municipalities which are leading at 15.5. The same if you go to Sekhukhune, you'll find Ephraim Mohale municipality at 15.4, same cultural beliefs and proof of one's fertility. Collins Shabani, we know it's one of the most rural municipalities. It's the one that is leading the province at 20.7%. And here it's also cultural acceptability. So those are the areas which would require much more intervention. And all studies that were done, for instance, the adolescent pregnancy and associated factors in South African youth, that was recently done and selected provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, and Eastern Cape were showing that in terms of the results are comparable but tend to favor more males than more females. For instance, with the risk status and behavior, females bear the brand, but the high risk behavior more common in males. For instance, a man will carry the high risk because of the behavior, can pregnant many of the girls. The man can be a carrier of the virus, and then the woman become a recipient of that. So we also, when we look at social factors, access to social work network resources, especially a strong family support, we found that it's fairly low levels of this fairly low levels of strong family support. Peer pressure amongst men lead them to engage in risky sexual behavior because they want to prove their manhood. So as a province, especially as the health sector, we are more worried about the health risks associated with teenage pregnancy. As I've indicated when I started here to say, premature deliveries are more common. I spend the money with premature babies in 2 hospitals. And I can tell you, young mothers, teenage mothers are the ones who bear the risk of delivering premature babies. Preeclampsia or hypertensive disorder, which tend to complicate your delivery. Conditions like anemia, contracting your sexual transmitted infections, including HIV, delivering a low birth weight babies, and high rate of cesarean section. We've seen it happening amongst the teenagers. That's why our cesarean section is very high. And the danger here is become, once you do a Caesar with the first baby, even the second baby, chances are we will have to do another Caesar, which then would limit you to three babies. But the problem here is that as a teenager, if you are 10 years old and you are to give birth, chances of your perineum to be adequate to can be able to accommodate the head of the baby are very, very slim. Hence, we always say babies should not be giving birth. Honorable Chair, it was painful for me and heartening when I visit 2 of my hospitals during Christmas, babies wanting to kiss the Christmas baby and hand over them gifts before we were dealt with COVID-19, only to find when I entered into nursery, I found there are 2 babies. One is calling herself the mother and the other one is a baby. So I didn't know who to give the present to because both of them are babies. The other one was supposed to be in a Sunday school. The other one not sitting in maternity where her grandmother is still denying her grandmother a chance to give birth because in our culture, once your children give birth, you can't be giving birth. So the intervention strategies that we develop as a province to try to curb this, it's led by the Department of Social Development. and the DSG enjoys the support of all other social cluster sector, and we have developed jointly with them a collaboration structure with NGO. Then the roles are clearly indicated. For instance, social development, Honorable Chair, they coordinate of the situational analysis, they profile those schools with high teenage pregnancy rate, they profile relevant communities, they report and stakeholder consultations, and they also engage in communities dialogue dealing with statutory rape and also issues of contraceptives. Whereas Health Department, we are providing with data on deliveries of teenage pregnancy in our facilities. We avail our condoms, contraceptives, and HIV prevention methods. We treat adolescents with dignity and respect in all our health facilities during contraceptives and antenatal care, and also delivery. We also provide information through She Conquers program. That is the MEC program. We are providing education and communication towards the young people, and also strengthen integrated school health services to identify and address these barriers. Department of Education also has got a major role where they educate even the boy child on toxic masculinity, on gender-based violence, on peer pressure, on substance abuse. We train also our educators on social ills so that they can be able to identify this substance abuse and all forms of abuse of our children. Also the learner support agency, the programs to keep learners engaged at school. So we also design our health education and pregnancy and HIV prevention at schools, and we work together with all these sectors. Sports, arts, and culture also, they've got a major role where they incorporate health education and health promotion activities into a mass sporting event. Of course, COVID-19 regresses us. That's why we're calling upon everybody to get vaccinated so that our catch-up plans on all these programs should be able to find its way. And I'm hoping, Honorable
Vice Chair, on a point of order, please.
Malibongwe.
Malibongwe, where's the House Chair?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm happy to see you. How many minutes has the speaker been given?
I think her time is finished now. I was about
No,
to
it was
say
finished 5 minutes ago.
Thank you, ma'am. The time is over, honorable member. Can the table guide me? Because I was supposed to call Honorable Boshoff, but I was guided that I must call Honorable Minister. And there was no minutes, that how many minutes? The time I was asking the table, it's whereby the member stood up and said how many minutes that he must talk.
Honorable Chair, let
Yes,
me conclude.
Your time is over with 5 minutes, ma'am.
Yes,
That's why now I was confused by the people that they've guided me to say I must allow you to speak, but they didn't give me your minutes, that how many minutes that you must speak. Then when I started to ask the table that how many minutes that you must speak, is whereby the table tell me that your time is over, and is whereby the honorable member also stood up and said, wanted to know how many minutes that we have given, and we are over with 5 minutes, ma'am.
I agree, Honorable Speaker. What I wanted to say was to simply
Your
say,
time is finished, ma'am. Your time is over. Honorable member, your time is over.
All I wanted to say was
You can't talk.
Your time is finishing.
All what I wanted to say was, let me conclude by saying thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Okay,
it's not a sin to say thank you.
Honorable member, sorry for that confusion, and sorry for me to speak when the mic is open. I didn't see that is open. Apologize about that. Honorable members, can we continue? I'd like to go back to Honorable Boshoff. He got 6 minutes. She got 6 minutes. Honorable Bishop.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. Just before I start and the clock starts ticking, please go to sleep again and give me 20 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Honourable House Chair, Honourable Minister, and Honourable Members. Rape is forced and unwanted. It's about power and not sex. A rapist uses actual force or violence or the threat of it to take control over another human being. For many girls in South Africa, their critical adolescent years have been shaped by experiences that are both irreversible and irreparable, invariably leaving them with lifelong consequences. Young girls, in many instances, preyed upon in schools, at church gatherings, get-togethers, whilst walking home from schools or running errands for their parents, and then blamed as if they were adults, by both the law and in practice. This Honourable Chair is in complete violation of international law and the Sustainable Development Goals. Exploitation of girls who are expected to transact sex for a variety of things, such as getting better grades, transportation to schools, etc. This has been a bone of contention for many years, and the perpetrators, more often than not, get off scot-free, as the victim is either threatened, excluded from continuing their education because they fell pregnant, a promise of monetary assistance, or the bribing of parents not to make a case. These acts, Honourable House Chair, are all in contravention of the human rights of these victims. In August 2021, we were exposed to the news of a horrendous rape of a 6-year-old grade 1 learner by a general worker in her school's toilet. The case seems to have died a silent death, and the child is left to fight the trauma on her own, as many parents are not in a position to request counselling or assisting their children in these instances. In 2019, President Ramaphosa described the crisis of sexual violence as a brutal war against women and girls. But despite political and financial view to end the crisis, the problem remains widespread with little to no consequences to the perpetrators. Furthermore, the National Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Strategic Plan has been provided a budget of 1.6 billion rand to immediately address the 5 key interventions. However, the additional funding has failed to curb the exponential rise in cases of abuse and rape. According to a recent study by Amnesty International, there is public outrage about the institutional failures to deliver justice for GBV victims, given that South Africa's Domestic Violence Act of 1998 explicitly states that victims may lay criminal complaints against offenders. Furthermore, funding intended for refuge centres for victims of GBV has either not been sufficient or has not reached the centres who were due to receive them. Honourable Chair, 1 in 5 children are victims of sexual abuse in South Africa, representing 19.8% compared to a global average of 18% for girls. In 2019-2020 annual crime statistics, it was reported that more than 24,000 children were sexually assaulted. A matter of grave concern is that, unfortunately, statistics are not readily available for schools, and there is a great deal of underreporting, and it's estimated that 22.2% of school children have been victim of violence, but unfortunately, the figure could be higher. Another aspect that exacerbates this issue is that despite a turnaround plan, which was implemented by SAPS in March of this year, and my previous colleague, Honorable Christian, spoke about this backlog. In the DNA cases continues to rise, standing at a whopping 237,631 cases. SAPS, Honorable House Chair, is clogging up the criminal justice system and denying justice to thousands of victims and their loved ones. Similar to all human beings, children's rights must always be defended as enshrined in the Constitution of the country and the Children's Act. Every child has the right to be protected from abuse, and government is not exempted from this. And we therefore call upon them to step up their game to ensure the protection of our young girls and to furthermore give them and their loved ones peace of mind that all cases will be treated fairly and expeditiously. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, I would like to call the next speaker, Honorable Mohaule, Deputy Minister of Basic Education. Then after, I would like to call Honorable Nyambe to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Chairperson, thank you very much, and greetings to you and the Deputy Chair, ministers and Deputy Ministers, MECs that are present today in this debate, and fellow South Africans. Honorable Chairperson, Igama lamakhosikazi. We meet today. We meet today to dialogue on the sensitive subject of the teenage pregnancy, sexual abuse, and rape of children that happens to school-going youngsters. From the outset, I must stress that the scourge of teenage pregnancies and sexual abuse doesn't mean that our schools have become crime scenes or suggest that inappropriate sexual conduct happens within the school premises. To understand the texture of the rampant unintended pregnancies and sexual abuse of school-going children, we must remind ourselves of the original meaning of a school. We have long repurposed our schools as centers of health, social, and hygiene education. We provide social support, nutrition, and feeding programs, psychosocial intervention, sexual, reproductive, and health services. Thus, for the most vulnerable young people, basic education remains lifestyle and life-saving. Our schools offer a protective layer against rampant social ills. South Africa is one of the few countries of the African continent, including Rwanda and Zambia, that offers comprehensive sexuality education, as alluded to by Minister of Health, Minister Joe Pasha. The comprehensive sexuality education has been part of the public school curriculum since the year 2000. The CSC, as abbreviated, and its scripted lesson plans aim to help learners build an understanding of concept, content, values, and attitude related to sexuality. It also addresses the issue of sexual behavioral change and strategies for leading safe and healthy lives. We reject, with the contempt it deserves, Honorable Chair, the notion that comprehensive sexuality education it sexualizes our children. The sexuality of the situation is that our children are under attack. We offer these critical life skills to our learners because we understand that schools are the microcosm of the society. Unfortunately, we live in a violent society that embraces rape culture and is defined by disproportionately high level of violence that affects fairer sex, such as gender-based violence and femicides. Within this context, Chairperson, we participate in the whole child development for all children in our care as the basic education sector. One of the insidious after effects of our society's rape and violence, the noise of the people.
Sorry, Honorable DM, can we be assisted about the noise at the background, staff, please? Sorry for the inconvenience, Honorable DM, you can continue.
Thank you so much, Chair. I was saying, as a country, we should be relishing this as a vital indicator of the future demographic dividend. Yet this cohort faces complex challenges during their young lives. In fact, they have become the most vulnerable cohort in the country. In this regard, majority of the adolescent girls and young women are trapped in the cycle of poverty and are susceptible to higher levels of HIV and sexually transmitted infections, STI rates. In this cohort of women between the ages 10 and 19 years, HIV prevalence is reported to be 4 times higher than of young men, with a reported cases of 1,300 infections everywhere. To say nothing of the rising incidences of gender-based violence, Chair, including sexual abuse and rape that directly leads to proportionally higher early and unintended pregnancies levels. Sadly, about 46% of sexual abuse complaints are reported by children in our country, while 15.1% of adolescent girls experience rape, sexual harassment, verbal, or bullying in our schools.
Can please the TV, the order, Honorable Chairperson, someone the TV is on somewhere.
Exactly, I'm being disturbed.
You are being set up.
I don't know why are you doing this to me. Can I
the
continue?
staff sort the mic that has got a TV that is on, because it's making an echo, and I thought it's one of the people connected, but I'm checking all the mics, they are off except the NCOP chamber co-host and the one of the DM. Sorry for that inconvenience, DM. Hopefully now they will attend properly to it so that we don't have the echo after we have said something. Can you continue?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether you counted my minutes. Honorable Chair.
Rest assured, you are fine.
Okay. To say nothing of the rising incidence of gender-based violence, including sexual abuse and rape that directly leads to proportionally higher early and unintended pregnancies level. Sadly, about 46% of sexually abuse complaints are reported by children in our country, while 15.1% of adolescent girls experience rape, sexual harassment, verbal, and bullying in our schools. Honorable members, as I said earlier, these heightened levels of sexual violence lead to higher than normal early and unintended pregnancies. Nearly 130,000 babies were delivered to girls aged between 10 and 19 in South African public health facilities in 2019. And this figure increased to 136,000 plus deliveries for girls in the same age cohort in 2020. The figures for the first quarter of 2021 from the Department of Health remains unacceptably high, with more than 36,000 babies delivered to girls aged between above 10 to 19. Of significant concern for these deliveries are the pregnancies that have occurred in the group of girl children at the ages of 10 to 14. And this results from sexual abuse and rape. According to the Sexual Offences Act, the age of consent for for sexual activity is 16 years. Therefore, if anyone engages in sexual activity with a child less than 16 years, it is considered statutory rape. Only 1/3 of girls stay in schools during their pregnancy and return following childbirth. This spectrum of early and unintended pregnancies creates poverty traps in affected families and negatively impacts the country's future fortunes. To say nothing of the impact it has on individuals and their families is a travesty of justice. Although our mandate remains to ensure that all learners, including adolescent girls and young women, complete their secondary education in a safe and nurturing environment, we appeal to all hands on deck mantra. We thus call upon the members of this august house to put aside their political differences and ideologies and pull together to solve this problem of teenage pregnancies and its twin evils of sexual abuse and rape. Our society must consider the complexity of sexual abuse and rape of children. Thus, it calls for a multi-sectoral response. We again implore state departments such as the Department of Basic Education, Health, Social Development, Women, Justice, and Police to tighten their work relationships to deal with this scourge of sexual abuse against our children. Chairperson, schools are a microcosm, I indicated, of the society. Therefore, there is a need to strengthen collaboration with civil society, communities, parents, and religious and traditional leaders to protect children from this sexual brutality. We remain convinced that our schools offer a bulwark against the rampart of social ills, including sexual abuse and gender-based violence. For example, during the hard lockdown in 2020, a 37% spike in gender-based violence complaints was reported in South Africa. Of major concern to us is that most victims of gender-based violence were children of school-going age. Clearly, the school closure led to the loss of curriculum time, and the social protection that school provides for our children. We observed a similar spike in the statistics for early and unintended pregnancies in teenagers during the same period. In other words, being out of school increases the vulnerabilities of adolescent girls and young women, resulting in increased sexual violence and unintended pregnancies. We firmly believe that safe and secure schools offer our learners an opportunity to develop to their full potential while mitigating against social ills. Whereas the sexual exploitation and sexual abuse of girls, a girl child, which in some cases lead to unintended pregnancies, remain a primary and societally concern as it negatively impacts their lives. Honorable members, as a lead department in the government's response to the challenges outlined, there is a handbook for learners on preventing sexual abuse in public schools titled Speak Out, Youth Report Sexual Abuse. The handbook's purpose is to equip learners with knowledge and understanding of sexual harassment and sexual violence, its implications, way to protect themselves from perpetrators, and where to report. It also provides beneficial contact details of national and provincial organizations that can assist in mitigating the incidences of sexual violence. We have also published the protocol on the management and reporting of sexual abuse and harassment in public schools. Therefore, we are committed to making sure that all our young people learn under such nurturing school environment so that they too can become active citizens of a thriving nation at peace with itself. In September 2021, Chair, we gazetted the revised learner pregnancy policy after Cabinet approval. This policy primarily commits the Department of Basic Education to endeavor to prevent early and unintended pregnancy in learners through providing comprehensive sexuality education in the curricula. Through comprehensive sexuality education content in the curriculum, the department empowered learners to understand what sexual abuse is and what to do with and when and where to cases of sexual abuse. In addition, the learner pregnancy policy provides that where a pregnancy has occurred, a learner should be provided with care, with counseling and support. In this regard, should a learner disclose the pregnancy and its nature, either rape or sexual abuse, the policy mandates the department to refer such learners to relevant authorities for further investigations and interventions. This ensures that the learner receives the necessary medical care, counseling, and support to address the trauma of sexual abuse and warrants the perpetrators of abuse and rape are brought to book. We are participating in the program of action on teenage pregnancy and Inter-Departmental task team that adopts a multi-sectoral approach promoting collaboration between relevant stakeholders. These stakeholders include government departments, development partners, non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, and young people themselves. This program of action is aligned to the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide under the stewardship of the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. While we correctly focus on the girl child, we are mindful of the hidden vulnerability of a boy child. They too suffer various types of sexual abuse, including boys who are homosexual or transgender and others who are silent about other forms of neglect and abuse experienced at home. Our intervention programs must provide boys with safe spaces to express themselves and talk openly about their social challenges. To protect our sector as a whole, we have since strengthened the implementation of the National School Safety Framework. This framework, Chair, serves as a management tool for provincial and district officials to respond in school safety matters. It delineates the roles of principals, senior management teams, school governing bodies, teachers, and learners so that all can identify and manage risks and threats of violence in and around school. As I close, Chair, we have a moral and constitutional obligation to protect our children from harm. Our duty as parents is to offer them an environment that is safe and secure for them to grow into responsible adults. I again appeal for collaboration as we tackle the scourge of teenage pregnancies, sexual abuse, and rape of our vulnerable children. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable DM. Sorry for the sound. Otherwise, it was corrected. The next speaker, it's Honorable Koza, KZN, MEC Social Development. MEC Koza.
Greetings to yourself, Honorable Chairperson. Greetings to the members, all the members present here. We meet virtually today to engage on a very painful and thorny issue that affects all of us as a society. Today's debate on teenage pregnancy is aligned with the theme, taking decisive measures to deal with the rape and abuse of young girls. Firstly, Honorable Chair, we should start by asking ourselves as parents, brothers, sisters, different sectors, and government, whether we have done enough to curtail rape, abuse, teenage pregnancy in our families, communities, and the society at large. We have a lot of people that often get away after violating the rights of a girl child in our communities. Some families protect rapists in their households because they are breadwinners. And for me, Honorable Chairperson, I believe that the withdrawal of rape cases should be taken as a serious crime because that reverse the gains made by and work done by our police. The cases that we are often exposed to as social development are hard to swallow, whether stepfathers, uncles, and even biological fathers are involved in statutory rape. Some of these cases do not even get prosecuted because families, including mothers of victims, conceal this incident as they are regarded as a disgrace. And for me, Honorable Chairperson, there's a serious moral decay among communities. We need to strengthen those family values. This government has done a lot. Government has introduced a number of programs to prevent rape, abuse, and teenage pregnancies in our schools and the society. But I still believe, Honorable Chairperson, for us to be able to detect the abusers at an early age, we need to put measures in place. Especially all schools should have at least a social worker, which will make it easy for a school-going age child to go to a social worker and have someone to talk to. Because as of now, parents have left the work of parenting to government. But if you see, by the look of things, we cannot do and win this battle alone as government. We need more hands to ensure that we win this battle. Especially our kids are being raped by known people, and they bear child at a very early age. And that child, mind you, is an unwanted child because they don't love this child and that child was not planned for. So the cycle of abuse is going on, will carry on, because definitely that mother who gets that child through rape will not love the child. So we need to stand up and stand up now. And we don't need to politicize this. It is unfortunate that if given this platform, we tend to abuse the platform and see this as an ANC government something who should do this and do this alone. We should, all of us, join hands in ensuring that we beat the scourge of gender-based violence and teenage pregnancy. These programs, the programs we have to cap the abuse, rapes, and teenage pregnancy would never yield positive results if you don't put more emphasis on strong family foundation. That's why I say we need to stand up. We need to revive the ABC, as the minister has said, the ABC message. Abortion should not be taken as another means of family planning, and the use of contraceptives should be encouraged. So joining hands, we will win this battle. We must all take decisive measures to deal with rape and abuse of young girls and women. As the founder of our nation, the late President Nelson Mandela often reminded us, and I quote, "Our children are our greatest treasure. They are our future. Those who abuse them tear at the fabric of our society and weaken our nation," close quotes. President Mandela understood that when parents have work pressures, they tend to neglect their responsibilities to nurture children. As this government, it is something that we should be discouraging parents from doing. There should be a time for work, but parents must limit the amount of work they take at home, as they need to dedicate time for their families and get to know what concerns their girl children. Disconnecting with the children's daily life expose them to a number of social ills. We have seen children getting involved in social ills because they surround themselves with the wrong individuals. We are expected to find a real solution to these complex issues, leading to early pregnancies of our children. Talking about sex with children is still a taboo. As this government, we are working very hard to ensure that our society overcomes these challenges. A child gets exposed to danger to due to a number of aspects, including being unable to share her life's frustrations or challenges encountered at school. And we need to play our role, each and every individual in our society, in our own communities, and each and everyone has a responsibility. A total of 500 young people in KwaZulu-Natal through sexual reproductive health rights workshops conducted at Umkhanyakude and Umkhanyakude alone under King Cetshwayo, Amajuba and Umzinyat. You could see that about 500 people have reached during these 2 months. And our desktop analysis conducted for eThekwini only and the district integrated implementation plan, which was developed on reduction of adolescent pregnancies. This was done in partnership with UNFPA. A number of programs are being done, but after all these, a total of 6,425 children were reached through awareness programs on teenage pregnancy. It is one of the embarrassing things to see. We have seen statistics showing that 21,651 teenage children have given birth between only the month of July and October this year. This means we need to triple our effort and involve all stakeholders in our campaign to fight teenage pregnancy. It is high time that fathers of these babies are traced. Cases should be opened and DNA should be taken so as to build strong cases against fathers. And the justice system should be of support and of assistance to women. The Honorable Minister has alluded to 9 to 10 years of age are giving birth to babies. This one shows that someone needs to be arrested. This is statutory rape. We have engaged to a number of programs. Your CHOMI as social development, which talks to 10 years, from age 10 years to 14 years, and the YOLO program, which takes 15 years to 24 years of age. But
as you conclude, MEC,
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. As I conclude, Honorable Chair, I believe that the serial rapists should be traced and put into books, especially even the school teachers themselves. They should be put into records as we go forward. We need to act and act now. That's what our government is doing as of now. A number of programs have introduced. Let us join hands. Let us pull those stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MEC Koza. The next speaker is Honorable Ntube. Honorable Ntube.
There's no network in Free State, nothing.
Honorable Mokause, please.
No, thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson of the Council. It's been quite some time not seeing you. Welcome back. The Chief Whip of the Council, Ntate Hai. Chief Whip, we have just a concern here that we think, because it's level 1, that you must give an instruction that 90% of the permanent delegates must be in the House, because we have witnessed the contestation of noise in those that are connected virtually. Thank you very much, Honorable Permanent Delegates.
You couldn't even participate to come here pumped up today. What is your...
Honorable Mokause, order, please. Continue, Honorable Tsube.
The girl child remains to be the most vulnerable and exploited in our society. Patriarchy is a system that exploits the weak and the most powerless amongst us in society. It is a system, if not uprooted, will continue to experience its consequences like this, like the matter that we are gathered here in this house for, the abuse and the raping of our girls. We need not to deal with the consequences of raping of our women and girls. However, with the very same system that condones such acts to perpetuate in our society. Patriarchy is a system that disempowers women. It takes away their freedom of choice and the right of gender equality. It sustains the triple oppression of inequality, poverty, and unemployment that women are faced with, including the feminization of poverty. Patriarchy undermines women and girls and impedes them in reaching their full potential, and by also limiting them to the resources that would have unlocked their potential. We have to rectify our language when we're dealing with teenage pregnancy. It is wrong and immoral of us to think as a child as young as 9 years can consent to sex. Instead, the recent statistics indicate that the number of girls that were raped. We need not to sugarcoat the truth. As a society, we would have entirely failed those young girls if we allow them to continue to be mothers at such an extreme age. Children cannot be having children. We would have failed them dismally if we do not support these children, these girls, and continue to empower them in order to prevent continuation of triple challenges that many of them face. If we do not, we would be failing in our mandate as leaders to achieve gender equality and in fighting oppressive system. We must resume in promotion of campaigns and programs that provide for effective protection of the girl child, emphasizing on the rights of children to education. It is therefore significant to continue to implement legislation and gender mainstreaming programs that aim to empower women and young girls, to intensify the fight against patriarchy in all its manifestations. In order to dismantle this vile system, we have to take into cognizance that the patriarchy is embedded in the economic, social, religious, cultural, family, and other relations in our communities. It is in the very fiber of our society. Our response to patriarchy requires to change how we think, how we do things, and how we socialize and children. Gender stereotypes are reaping havoc in our society. We have to pay attention into how we socialize our girls and boy children. It has now become often to hear that young boys sexually assault young girls. It begs the question as to what we teach our children. What is going on in our homes? If we want to realize the idea of a gender equal society, we have to realize our children, we have to raise our children differently, and what is taught in schools must be parallel to the teachings at home. Gender stereotypes shape self-perception, attitudes to relations, and how children and adults see themselves in society and the world general, all due to how we socialize ourselves with our children. These gender stereotypes must be addressed if we are to realize a gender equal society. We must interrogate our cultural tradition and religious practices. Although progress has been made, there is where the very same system that we so badly want to dismantle perpetuates. Most cultures and religions suppresses women and the vulnerable. The dominance of one by another has detrimental consequences like the one that we are dealing with today. Some traditions and religions allow for a criminal and immoral act to persist. Rape is a crime, and raping a child is a crime. A child can never consent to any kind of sexual act. We have to address traditions that protect perpetrators of violence and sexual offense. Our approach of dealing with matters of sexual violence in families should never be in a traditional or religious manner. We must educate our children that statutory rape is a criminal offense, even if its minors raping each other. And as members of society, we must be stringent towards it and not to allow perpetrators to manipulate culture by using cultural practice such as paying for damages towards victims to avoid the consequences of rape. We have to intensify our fight against toxic masculinity, cultural and religious beliefs by advocating for women's rights through the Commission of Gender Equality and the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. We must remain resolute in engaging traditional communities to educate them about toxic cultures such as Ukutwala and others that continue to be the surge of child marriages. The multi-sectoral approach and coordination structures inclusive all
Honorable
all
Mahlangu. Sorry, Honorable Nsube. Honorable Mahlangu, please.
I hope it's not eating on my time, Honorable House Chairperson.
No, I'll consider your time. Honorable Mahlangu, please switch off your mic. Honorable Mahlangu from Mpumalanga, please. Thank you. Sorry for that inconvenience, Honorable Nsube. You can continue.
The multi-sectoral approach and coordination structures inclusive of all key stakeholders that has been created to deal with the plague of toxic cultures and gender-based violence in our society must be strengthened if we are committed to deal with the root cause of disempowering women in all sectors of society. As the ANC will remain resolute in being vocal in the advancement of children's rights by empowering the girl child and women to stop the cycles of poverty in families. We understand the significance of supporting and promoting struggles for the rights of children. We have a responsibility to stop the exploitation of the girl child by putting empowering programs and measures in place that are going to make them reach their full potential. It is up to us, including all sectors of society, to build an enabling environment and a safer communities where we live in. The sexual violence that is meted out of girl child can only be fully addressed by building a society that does not condone sexual violence in any way. By instilling the culture that no person, no matter how powerful or important they may think they are, they have a level of impunity in terms of raping. We have to protect children by all means necessary, never to allow ourselves to be so low that we utilize children to settle political and social grievances. The responsibility rests upon all of us to protect this innocent soul at all times. We must make all spaces, including our homes, schools, playgrounds, public spaces, safe for children and women. I call upon all of us to never turn a blind eye to the abuse of children, including the child-headed houses. Because if we do, we will be completely failing the future of our country and ruin the society which we wish to build. Honorable House Chairperson, yesterday we were debating about the number of school dropouts of learners. Just that I could not participate. I had issues of network problems. But when we were leading courses, we made a call that the education system of South Africa must be changed. The education system of South Africa is not attractive to the young people. That's why you see them dropping out, not particularly because that we acknowledge all these issues that are there, but the education system is not appealing to the youth. That's why we do not even care to be educated, because even if you can have a PhD degree in economics, but still you can't solve the economics problems of the day. You are a doctor in sociology, but the problems of society, you can't solve them. So we are saying that because the Deputy Minister of Education is here, that you must not revisit, South Africans as a whole, we must draft our new education paradigm that will be able to speak to the issues that we are confronted with, not to be taught about the low caste. I mean, that is completely different. You must be taught about issues that are in relation to today and tomorrow. So we're saying that in conclusion, Honorable House Chair, what is really the problem? Because from the beginning, we have not dealt with the problem. We have dealt with what makes us to be where we are. But what is the real problem? What is it that we are not doing as a society? Why are we having a sick society like this? It's simple, I can tell you. It's simple that, I still have 1 minute. That the streets, in an actual fact, there are 4 institutions that controls and shape human behavior. It is the street, it is a church, it's a family, and a school. And in an actual fact, it is in the streets where the black child receives his basic orientation and where he gives his reference point. And we know that many hours of our time, we spend it in schools. Why is it that in schools we are not taught what we should be taught? Because less of the time we spend it when we are in our homes, when we're in church, when we're with our families. So we're saying that fix education system so that it become fashionable and attractive to the young people. So we're saying that to Deputy Minister present here, the curriculum must be changed so that it become attractive to all the young people. In conclusion, we would like to quote President Mandela when he says, our children, our greatest treasure, they are the future. Those who abuse them tear at the fabric of our society and weaken our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Nsube. The next speaker is Honorable De Bruin. Honorable De Bruin.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Chairperson, sorry. Honorable Chair, we have all heard the statistics and the figures repeatedly today, so I will not repeat them all again. But I think the most shocking of these figures and statistics are the more than 1,000 girls under the age of 40 that fell pregnant between April 2020 and March 2021. And the biggest question that comes to mind is, why weren't all these cases being investigated by the police, as it is statutory rape according to the law of South Africa? Surely this is something that needs urgent attention, and we as adults and parents must insist and demand on stricter law enforcement and harsher punishment for those who make themselves guilty of rape and gender-based violence. Aan die ander kant moet ons ook die ongemaklike waarheid erken wat die SASSA toelaas betref as dit kom by tienerswangerskappe. Ek het in die laaste week met verskeie individue in verskeie areas gekommunikeer. En baie is dit eens dat die kindertoelaag 'n maklike en alledaagse manier geword het om 'n mate van inkomste te genereer. Met die toelaag van R440 per kind of R1,050 per pleegsorgkind, is dit heeltemal te maklik om die stelsel te misbruik in Suid-Afrika vandag, sonder om die langtermyn negatiewe te besef wat tieners gaan kniehalter vir sukses in die toekoms. En dan moet ons die vraag vra, wie is die skuldiges? Is dit die regering se skuld wat nie genoegsame wetstoepassing verseker om kinderverkrachtings te bekamp of te voorkom nie, of is dit die onderwysstelsel wat te eksplisiete seksvoorligting op te jong ouderdomme op ons kinders afdwing en ons kinders vroeg ryp en vroeg groot maak? Of is dit die regering wat in sy onvermoë sosio-ekonomiese chaos veroorsaak wat kinders en gesinne dryf na ekstreme om 'n mate van inkomste te verseker? Die antwoord is eenvoudig. Dit is nie die een of die ander nie. Al die bogenoemde is skuldig aan die morele verval van ons land wat hierdie skokkende syfers van tienerswangerskappe veroorsaak. Proper non-explicit sex education for teenagers and parents, as well as proper law enforcement with real consequences for those guilty of rape and gender-based violence and a favorable socio-economic status in South Africa, are the first steps to address this crisis. And I sincerely hope it will be prioritized by government for the sake of our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable De Bruin. The next speaker is Honorable Nkwana Mashabana, Minister in the Presidency for people, for youth, women, and people with disability, persons with disabilities. Honorable Minister Nkwana Mashabana.
Thank you very much, Chair, for this opportunity, and greetings to all the participants. Today, and towards the end of the year, it's supposed to be the time when we're all supposed to be celebrating that which President pronounced beginning of this year, that we're celebrating Charlotte Manye Makeke as the first African female scientist from University of Ohio in the United States of America. We are unable to do so because half of almost everything that she fought for, and she really thought Africans would be much mad ahead today, have been reversed. Yes, one can never ever say we have defeated apartheid, but the next big enemy that we really have to fight and win against is patriarchy. But for us to win against patriarchy, we need both men and women. Women don't rape women. Women don't kill women. Women don't do wrong things to women. Women do not provide support for their children. So it will, and it always has taken a village to raise a child. It is not a responsibility of women alone, who are also oppressed. In fact, triply, before they can deal with other challenges of the society. So if men can join in, and we can see from where I'm sitting in women, youth, and people with disabilities, there are groups of sane men who have started groupings to help, to support, but we are saying this in LA. It is not a problem of men or women, but it hurts women. Yesterday, I attended a court hearing in Seshego, where I think a pedophile or some crazy man had managed to kill 10 women. 7's bodies have been found, 10 are still being hunted, and he thinks that the solution was just to hang him, and that all that will be. But the magistrate insisted that they want to know what happened to the rest. What did these women do? All those who were killed, they were looking for jobs to be able to take care of their children. Is government not doing anything about all these challenges facing women? Government alone, without the entire society, and including civil society, would not have had NSP, which was a joint effort between government and business. And President would not have formed this committee also of security cluster and the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disabilities to make sure that we do away with these evils against women. Yes, women, particularly children, so said the UNFP, do not, if they are not educated from home, from school, from street, from everywhere they go, that evil is evil, that they cannot on their own experiment on these things. We really, honorable men, cannot say we are okay if men are just carriers and others would, after being raped, become pregnant or die of early pregnancy or die of HIV and AIDS. It's okay as long as it's women. For this society to get right, yes, the education system has to change, The spatial development in our country should no longer continue to be what it is at the moment, where you know who lives where and who must be in the mkuku and be doomed into that forever. There's a lot that we have to change, and there's a lot we have to do working together, so that the horror movie we saw yesterday at the Seshiwo Court comes to an end overnight. It is almost said that we have to remind honorable members here, Chair, that yes, we've always known that there's sexual violence and exploitation, but that 2020 and 2021, we will have more, we didn't want to, but we had more children impregnated because of COVID-19. So women faced COVID as the whole world, women of South Africa faced COVID as it was faced by the entire world, but even more, when there is a lockdown, these pedophiles go home and all they do is to add more pain by leaving children and raping and punishing the law-abiding citizens, which are women of this country. The challenges of this country will come to an end, in particular, this one of gender-based violence and femicide. When men, all of them, decide that it is not a problem of women, but of the society, that we hold hands and say, Kwanele, enough, it's enough. Everywhere else you read about women killed in their numbers and for doing nothing, just by being women. Yesterday, one of the naughty, I wouldn't say naughty, angry woman asked, why do you do this to women? He said, no, he also felt that he really wanted to drink blood and taste. So I wondered as I was driving back to Pretoria as to how many of men's blood would he want to taste if that's what he says. But I am appealing, Chair, that it is about time that the society, South Africa, we have defeated apartheid. We should defeat this. Otherwise, we are becoming a home for pedophiles and all other people who look down upon women. And everybody is beginning to say now, 3 weeks ago, we hosted CEDAW in South Africa. They say you're doing very well on taking care of women in South Africa. Save for, they do not have jobs. 2, women are terrorized much more by people they know. That is, that there is gender-based violence all over the world, but more in South Africa, it's because of femicide. That even people who are supposed to be malumes and so on, by sunset, they change and become something else. And that's why you should always link what Dr. Patla has been talking about, this calamity that we've been faced with in 2020 and 2021, and the number of child pregnancies, with the fact that it found the ground ripe because men feel it is the problem of women. It is the problem of South Africans all of us, we need to make sure from all of our life that children in South Africa are the future. If you talk of generation equality, there will be no future, there will be no woman who is marriageable, because they will all be wasted by your good selves, because you deflowered them at the time when they were not supposed to. You failed them and did not protect them. The statistics, South Africa and all, and the UN and all, there's no disagreement about how South Africa is turning a blind eye on this issue of gender-based violence and femicide. We are just about to go into the 16 days against violence against women. Please show that we can do the 16 days, 365 days. Don't look the other way. Let us continue fighting, protecting all women, because the Constitution of South Africa protects even, or to start with, women of South Africa. They also fought for freedom. They are very peaceful. They take care of all those who need help, and they are never on the forefront of wanting to take anybody's life. So please stop impregnating children as women, stop raping them, stop maiming. Let's do that which we said we'll do when we become a free country. UNICEF and other United Nations organizations have also trying models in countries like Kenya to make sure that we don't just talk, we also look at how we could put a stop to this anomalies. But as for children being mothers, this is really something that we should abhor. What I've heard from the president is that after adopting the NSP, we should now be looking at how do we empower women that they do not stay in toxic relationships, because what will they eat if they go and not succumb to subjugation? Chairperson, a call is being made. Let's all come together and defeat this enemy. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Nkwana Mashabana. Thank you. The next speaker is Honorable Mazumbye, Gauteng MEC Social Development. Honorable MEC Gauteng.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Honorable Speaker of the NCOP and the Deputy Speaker of the NCOP, Honorable Ministers Patla and Nkwana Mashabane, the Deputy Ministers that are on call, fellow MECs, honorable members of the NCOP, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We, the Department of Social Development in Gauteng, learned with all South Africans about the statistics that were released in August, that 23,000 teenage pregnancies were recorded, and that some of the young mothers were as old as 10 years. This is a very, very disturbing statistic. We also look at the causes of, or possible causes of, what that could be. A wide range of factors, including economic and social factors, have been purported to be the driving forces for teenage pregnancy. However, the provision of necessary health services, preventing the risk of early marriage, and ensuring that adolescents remain in school are some of the key elements of inhibiting unplanned adolescent pregnancy. The level of unintended pregnancies among teenage girls has remained a public health concern. Generally, it is acknowledged that social and behavioral patterns have a greater bearing on HIV prevention as well as teenage pregnancy. Vulnerability is increased among young people due to several factors such as behavioral issues, like low self-esteem, peer pressure, and a sense of wanting to belong, which affect young people's decision-making capacity, and it compromises their ability to consider long-term consequences. Many young people tolerate risk by being involved in multiple and concurrent partnerships, while numerous young people engage in early sexual behavior without protection. Others become involved in intergenerational relationships. They use intoxicating substances, and this also contributes, is one of the contributing factors to the dire statistics that we're faced with today. Apart from these behavioral and social factors, structural issues also play a role. And these include culture, unemployment, unemployability, poverty, and poor education. Important to note is that the notion that child support grants promote adolescent pregnancies in South Africa has been discredited by notable scholars who are, some of them are based at the University of the Witwatersrand in Gauteng. Their research arrived at the conclusion that no significant association exists between the child support grant and adolescent fertility in South Africa. Their research continues, and we're keeping a keen eye on it because it's important that we understand some of the contributory factors that gives us the situation that we're faced with. So I contend that the prevalence of teenage pregnancies begs the question, where are the young men involved? A study, again, by the same University of the Witwatersrand accurately states that the teenage pregnancies involve both girl and her male partner. And the characteristics of these young men could be fundamental underlying factor which should not be ignored. Often we assess teenage pregnancy as a female issue. However, we assert that men's sexual relationship with a teenage girl is critical in these discussions. Focusing on the girl alone when deliberating would only make our analysis solution skewed, and we're all aware of that fact. And this could make the eradication of teenage pregnancies impossible. In the same study, and I want to share this statistics with you, data taken from young men between the ages of 12 to 22, in which Gauteng province accounted for 19%, and the rest taken from other provinces, indicates that 25.7% of these had sex before the age of 15. 22.5% had impregnated at least one girl, and 23.7% had at least one biological child living with them. An overwhelming 93.2% indicated that they had 2 or more lifetime sexual partners. About 1 in 5 rarely used condoms, and 66.1% reported using condoms frequently. Furthermore, 16.5% of them indicated that 0.8% had not done HIV screening. Remember, this is for boys between the ages of 12 and 22, an age where it starts that is not acceptable for children to be engaging in sex yet. But anyway, while there are several programs aimed at teenage pregnancy reduction, the interplay between young men's involvement needs heightened attention. Knowledge of the characteristics of young men that engage in sex with teenagers and programs targeted at educating young men could create lasting solutions to end the crisis of teenage pregnancies. So as a Department of Social Development, we have numerous interventions aimed at teenage pregnancy reduction. For instance, through our child care and protection services, the department implements a variety of services for orphans and vulnerable children in partnership with home community-based centers, organizations through our province. Furthermore, the department's program promotes the protection, development, and well-being of children. The department also manages child and youth care centers that provide programs that meet the children's needs. We are painfully aware of the fact that these are not sufficient, but the reports that we are getting through our monitoring and evaluation division gives a good indication, and they give us hope that at least the intervention that we are providing is making a difference. Also, we have the school social work program, which provides provision of social work services in schools. This program is aimed at improving academic and behavioral outcomes in schools. The implementation of this program in schools is critical as children are increasingly becoming victims of many social ills that negatively affect their learning program. Families, communities, and societies are in a state of change. And until it becomes stabilized in whatever form, children's unmet physical, social, and emotional needs will continue to interfere with their ability to learn and adjust in school. As the department, we developed a comprehensive strategy on HIV and AIDS, which seeks to address the social and structural drivers and promote positive behavior change outcomes amongst targeted populations. Through this strategy, it is expected that there will be decreased risk sexual behavior in targeted populations. There will be increased uptake of HIV and TB testing. There will be treatment and care services in targeted populations. There will be gender-based and intimate partner violence reduction programs, and stigma and discrimination will also be reduced. Our social and behavior programs are aimed at responding to young people's needs while building resilience, increasing their autonomy, self-esteem, and self-efficacy, as well as minimizing risky behavior. With the social behavior change program, we seek, among other things, to create an enabling environment in which young people can safely voice their issues. In this particular sense, we host a number of youth dialogues. We also invest positive values in young people, and we instill active citizenry in young people and break communication barriers between young people and their parents or guardians. Our SPC program, including Young Only Live Once and the CHOMI program targeting youth from 14 to 17 years, recently succeeded by CHOMI for a target group of 10 to 14-year-olds. These programs are acclaimed as very useful tools to building confidence and resilience among the young. Family Matters is a program aimed at strengthening the capacity of families to respond to issues requiring psychological intervention. Is my time up? Okay.
Not yet.
The
you still have
implementation
the 2
of
minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the alert. So let me get to the salient points. We also have the Banapili program, which is a priority program of our department, and it focuses on programs such as the provision of school uniform to children in disadvantaged schools and access to early childhood development. The school uniform project has 2 main components, which are to provide uniforms to learners and provide an income to women and cooperatives to produce the uniforms. The gist of this program is to make sure that we empower mothers and we make it possible for them to have incomes for their families so that they don't find themselves in dire straits. But we also support their children who are at school so that they don't have to be worried about, providing things like uniform for their children. So to conclude, House Chair, all of these interventions that we have as the department are aimed at reducing child poverty and to provide basic needs for children to prevent relations with older men as a means of survival. Most of the speakers spoke to that, and I think we are aware as a country that this is one of the biggest problems that we are facing. So there's a clarion call from all women in the country that men should help us to fight this problem, come with solutions. Let's look at when departments review their programs. We need substantive inputs from men because we believe that they have solutions as well. Thank you very much, House Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MEC. The next speaker is Honorable Porter, Western Cape, Chair of the Standing Committee of Education. Honorable Porter.
Honorable Ministers, Honorable Members, Honorable House Chair, good afternoon. The statistics revealed this year that the Gauteng province recorded over 23,000 teenage pregnancies, of which over 600 were amongst girls under the age of 10. And this has been quoted by speakers before me. This was shocking, although we knew this has been a problem for years in Africa and South Africa. Chair, a study by UCT showed there was a slight decline and even leveling of fertility rates between 2008 and 2018. At the same time, the study cautions that the rate is difficult to calculate. This is in stark contrast to the latest numbers, which showed a 60% increase for the last year. Internationally, in terms of developing countries, our own rates remain unacceptably high, and another research paper confirms that the household determinant of teenage pregnancies in Rwanda, for example, is limited, and casual factors are often underanalyzed, which compromises intervention. In the Western Cape, the numbers stood at 11,000 for the same period and over 300 for girls under the age of 10. In each of these contexts, Chairperson, these numbers call for a critical review of our current measures to deal with teenage pregnancy and sexual assault in communities, but also with greater urgency as we face an integrated developmental problem. For many, a teenage pregnancy is often the aftermath of first-time sexual intercourse. From this, it is clear that our girls lack an in-depth understanding of sexual relationships and the complexities thereof. Life orientation, school counseling, and advocacy covers the basic of our health. Mitigating measures such as safe sex by the use of condoms for both girls and boys, the availability of emergency contraceptives, to abstain and or to delay intercourse, and consumption of contraceptives in its various forms. Chair, the numbers also highlight that despite of the 4 main health practices to deal with teenage pregnancies, it still remains a common occurrence. And therefore, we need to advocate on the social factors that inform our problem, such as the stigmatization on teenagers when visiting clinics, where girls share accounts of poor treatment by staff when visiting clinics to take precautionary and responsible health measures. Or conditions at home where parents perceive the topic as sex as taboo or are simply absent, as is a common occurrence for many of our girls. On the other end of this end of the spectrum, there are conditions that offer an incentive to early pregnancy, feeling love and belongingness, and quite frankly, access to social grants or other economic gains. Though this may perpetuate a cycle of poverty instead, it is so critical that we break these barriers as a first point of call. In the absence of preventative measures, many girls are not adequately prepared for the new life as a young mother and the new lifelong responsibility or nurturing another individual following an array of socio-economic challenges following this unstable environment. And when we consider those under consensual age, we face legal obstacles, and for those who are also victims of sexual assault. When dealing with the rape of young girls, as a country, we have adequate and internationally recognized laws and regulations, and gender-based violence in particular has received heightened attention. But this falls through clear cracks in the justice system. The consequent erosion of confidence in the system is what we need to rectify in support of our young girls and victims of crime everywhere. These are only some of the obstacles faced in undertaking measures to help curb the prevalence of these challenges. But it is important that we start at the core of this problem and understand which of our current interventions are not effective when contraceptives, for example, have a 90% effectiveness rate, and that comprehensive and appropriate sexual education with the guidance of parents remain a hot topic. We have to move towards a more effective approach, which starts with clearly identifying the current obstacles, being critical about what works and what does not work, being sensitive and also responsive to the victims. As public representatives who are in positions to hold departments to account, we need to ensure that an enabling environment is created to promote measures and create a platform that deals directly but holistically. Departments of health, social development, and education strategies must be integrated and targeted in line with the Children's Act for impact, using the health and educational sector data to target social interventions at hotspots. Within communities, parents need to be included in this approach and buy into preventative measures and responsible reactive measures by encouraging open and secure discussions with children and teenagers, sharing reliable information, ensuring that we extend education beyond the girl child to boys and men on their roles and responsibilities. Going a step further and consider the principle of role modeling, where success stories and lessons are shared amongst those who have navigated through the challenge before. This would go a long way to address the stigma and fear when girls find themselves in this position, but are unable to respond responsibly and prevent a negative cycle of life starting from gestation at a young age. An example hereof lies in encouraging and ensuring that girl children complete school. I'm pleased that the Western Cape is in a standing strategic priority for the Provincial Education Department. Education is both a key preventative and remedial measure in dealing with this developmental problem, ensuring that girls have the correct information and can make informed and knowledgeable decisions on their well-being and that of their child. In conclusion, Chairperson, as representatives of our various constituencies, we must acknowledge that this is not a political problem, but one that affects those who are not politically active, but that will have major social implications nonetheless. Moreover, we need to set the tone and pace for dealing with teenage pregnancies decisively. That does not only address the rate of teenage pregnancies in our communities or in our country, but in a way that is sensitive to young girls and responsive individuals and the societal development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Porter. The next speaker is Honorable Moilwa, MEC for Social Development, Northwest Province. Honorable MEC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Akite Tsunuye Kukudumedisa, honorable members of the NCOP, special greetings to all esteemed speakers to this August House. More than 20,000 women who marched the Union Building on 9 August 1956 in protest against the extension of past laws to women had a generational mission of ensuring that women are free in all aspects of their lives. Their bravery against the brutal regime of apartheid inspires us to this day. The bravery of women of 1956 must propel us to face head-on this scourge of teenage pregnancy and rape of young women in our society. The battle against teenage pregnancy and rape of young women must be waged at all levels, including at home. We as policymakers, we must make sure that the environment is conducive for our society to successfully defeat this scourge. This is not the time to lament, but to take radical action in the quest to deal away with the environment that makes this scourge of teenage pregnancy to thrive. Several studies have argued that young schoolgirls engage in sex with older partners and have transactional sex whereby gift or money are exchanged for sex. Such relationships result in young women having little or no negotiation power with their partners to insist on condoms usage, a situation which may result in high risk of becoming pregnant and contracting sexually transmitted infections, including HIV and AIDS. The environment of poverty, inequality, and unemployment creates a fertile ground for this transactional relationship. Honorable members, Honorable House Chair, early pregnancy and motherhood in South Africa forces many girls to drop out of school, traps many in a cycle of poverty dependent on public assistance, and leaves many stigmatized by society for being teenage mothers or forced into early marriages. Chairperson, the theme of this debate is calling upon lawmakers and society at large to take a decisive measure to deal with teenage pregnancy and the rape of young girls in our communities. Women have a crucial role to play in the fight against teenage pregnancy and rape culture in our society. As mothers, fathers, and lawmakers, we hold the key to building a future free of teenage pregnancy and rape culture. The Department of Social Development plays a significant role in the care, protection, and support of women and girls, especially in rural communities. The following are some of the basket services through which various programs respond to the issue of teenage pregnancy and rape of young girls in our province. Chair, on HIV and AIDS, as a department, we have signed an MOU with Shout It Now to strengthen services to young women. The objectives of Shout It Now are empowering young women to make responsible choices and speak out. It enriches life skills of young women to enable them to build sound relationships. A media launch was conducted to pronounce the partnership and create awareness of the services provided by Shout It Now. On social and behavioral change, Chair, I will not dwell much on it because my colleagues in other provinces have already spoken about it, the CHOMI program, which also in our province, we have managed to reach out to 6,789 adolescent girls and young women which were on social and behavioral change programs. The other thing that we have managed to do is we have also managed to reach out to 407 children through Child Protection Week awareness. Chair, there is a dream, the DREAMS program in social development that is there to ensure that all adolescents, girls, and young women know their status. Young women that are HIV negative and at high risk are enrolled on PrEP. Young women that are HIV positive are linked to care to access or start or continue their treatment. Issuing of contraceptives to young women having unprotected sex to minimize the risk of unplanned or unwanted pregnancies. The other thing is that provision of post-exposure and emergency contraception to those exposed to HIV, usually survivors of GBV within 72 hours of exposure. Chair, on this one, we have Healthy Choices, which is number 1, and 2 program to empower young women to make healthy choices. Healthy Choices target school-going children between the age of 10 to 14 and 13 to 17 with programming that encourages abstinence, delaying sexual debut, and safe sex. Through Healthy Choices, 6,523 young women were reached, and Stepping Stones program involving a series of workshops designed to help promote sexual health, improving psychosocial well-being, and prevent HIV and AIDS. The Men-to-Men program specifically targets men, which are the male sex partners of the young girls, and draws on the methodology and content from the Stepping Stones program and covers content on HIV testing, voluntary medical male circumcision for HIV prevention, condom use, and gender-based violence. Through the Men-to-Men program, we have managed to reach out to 3,428 men. The Families Matter Chair program is a program that targets parents and caregivers of adolescent children to enable them to better prepare their child for safely navigation adolescence and to engage with them on topics such as sex, family planning, pregnancy, and HIV and AIDS, because we often talk about it. It's a taboo to talk about it. So we have this program in social development. And through the Families Matter program, 108 families had been reached to change negative sexual behavior. The Safe Spaces Girls Clubs program intervention uses a girl-centered approach to empower adolescents, girls, and young women to develop social and protective assets in order to reduce their risk for HIV, gender-based violence, and unwanted pregnancy. Through the Safe Spaces, we have managed to reach more than 14,000 young girls. And we have another program, Chair, which these are the interventions from our province in social development. The SASA program by Shout It Now is developed by raising voices to address the links between violence against women and HIV and AIDS. We have the social crime prevention, where we are able to promote the idea of taking responsibility for own actions within the community. The program intends to reduce the rate of crime, sexual offenses committed by children. The program also implemented in national accredited diversion programs dealing with sexuality and making right decisions amongst young people, which are provided. Children are further taught and encouraged to own up to their actions. We have the Victim Empowerment Program, which is to conduct community engagement programs through dialogues that addresses the gender-based violence and rape. The program implements activities that intend to reduce the incident of rape as a social ill. Children are included in prevention or advocacy program provided at schools where topics like rape and teenage pregnancy are presented and discussed. Children are also taught to be assertive, self-love, and report sexual acts committed against them. A chair in closing substance abuse program, because this is also one of the things that is terrorizing our communities, or making sure that as social development, we deal with this matter, because substance abuse also is something that makes these things to be done by our young boys. This program conducts community engagement programs that deals with behavior associated with substance abuse. The program implements activities that intend substance abuse among young children. Service points and NPOs are implementing Kimoja program, where children are targeted and taught about the negative effects of substance abuse. Commemoration of Anti-Drug Week also promote making responsible choices by children. Honorable members, we are called upon to make sure that teenage pregnancy and rape of young women is eradicated in our communities, because it's a sickness in our community and it's a monster. On matter of rape of young women, we need to focus on these who are seen to be potential perpetrators of this scourge. A focus must be on men as ambassadors of the battle against scourge of rape of young women. We must be more preventative than reactive in our approach. This needs unity of purpose of lawmakers, business sector, the judiciary, and society. It all starts with me, it starts with you, and it starts with all of us. Aluta continua, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable MEC. The next speaker is Honorable Bacher. Honorable Bacher. Honorable Bacher.
I'm here, Chair. Honorable members, I want to first acknowledge the fact that the spirit in which this debate is handled is quite encouraging, because I think it talks to the real problems and challenges that we are confronted with. Having said that, Honorable Chair, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, according to Stats SA, 34,587 teenagers gave birth in 2020. Of those, 688 were aged 9 and 10. And of the 34,587 births, 16,042 were aged 17. Stats SA indicated that 1,003,307 births were registered in South Africa in 2020. New figures from the Gauteng Department of Health that more than 23,000 girls under the age of 18 gave birth in April 2020 and March 2021, of which 934 were aged under 14, compared to 14,577 girls aged 19 and under having babies in the same period a year earlier. This not only forces young girls to prematurely take adult roles, which they are not emotionally ready for, but indicates that so many girls under the age of 14 are engaging in sexual activities, which is very concerning. The fact that 64% of the fathers are not registered for their kids is a greater challenge and disgraceful. The omission of the father's details could prove that it is not by mistake, but deliberately avoiding accountability. Teenage pregnancy in South Africa is a multifaceted problem, with many contributing factors such as poverty, gender-based violence, substance abuse, challenges of access to health facilities, poor access to contraceptives, and issues with the termination of pregnancy. In some poverty-stricken areas, pregnancy is seen as the only way out of it. This is due to the fact that one can access child grants, and also the father might also play his part in maintaining the child, which is not always the case. However, the most important consideration of teenage pregnancy is the impact it has on the unplanned child. In Kensani Primary School in Soshanguve, a grade 1 learner going to the toilet was followed by a general worker who allegedly raped her. Instances such as this needs to be dealt with by the law enforcement agencies. Those in charge of school safety have to up their game to ensure and see to the safety of the learners. Such ills cannot be allowed to happen unabated by the schools, who have overall responsibility for the safety of children during school hours. The issue of child rape, offers disguised as teenage pregnancy, is one of the telling signs of why we should call ourselves a failed society, because the youth is slowly losing hope on us as leaders of society. Our law is unambiguous about statutory rape, and yet 10-year-old girls fall pregnant and there's nothing untoward about it. However, these are real problems with lives that are left devastated with no consequences for the perpetrators. Let's be open and honest in this chamber. These are children now being tasked with raising children. At what point do we as adult South Africans stand up and do something about it and not wait for someone else, for the government, for another department to be the one that acts? We must acknowledge that if the adults in our communities are happy just to speak publicly about their anger and not demand justice for children who are not just deliberate, but killing the souls of our children and destroying their future. Dr. Linda Ncube says, I quote, "The first place to start is to fix our broken system by continuously holding the role players in the youth ecosystem. Evidently, there is no lack of legislative instruments in our country to either protect children or create an environment designed to prevent teenage pregnancy. But the pervasive issue is that of systematic unwillingness to act. This unwillingness keeps breaking our values while keeping us in a vicious cycle. Let the child teenage pregnancy be a thing of the past when we become custodians of children and work with all to rid our communities of this ill. Let the government, civil society, and communities be partners in ensuring the safety and well-being of girls by protecting them and putting their future ahead of everything we do. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Baga. Thank you, Honorable Baga. The next speaker is Honorable Ndongeni. Honorable Ndongeni.
Sihlalo wendlu yowiso mthetho wamaphondo. Sekela sihlalo malungu endlu yowiso mthetho. OMEC ne-special delegates ezikhoyo namhlanje, fellow South Africans. Ndiyanibulisa emva kwemini. Honorable Chairperson, building safe community entails the strengthening of communal safe partnership with the relevant department and civil organization. The importance of the existence and the revitalization of such partnership and structures is paramount in the building of the safer community indeed. We need to create space that are safe for women, children, and the most vulnerable to be safe. The building of safe community cannot be achieved by government alone. It requires an integrated approach of involving all sectors of society, and this includes the mobilization of all citizens. Safer communities translate to a crime-free South Africa. And in order to realize that, we need to implement these priorities, such as strengthening the criminal justice system. However, although progress has been made in this sector through the passing legislation to intensify the fight against gender-based violence and femicide and sexual offenders. However, more still to be done in this regard. Criminals, particularly those are sexual violence and gender-based violence, are not deterred enough from committing sexual violence and gender-based, However, more still to be done in this regard. Criminals, particularly those sexual violence and gender-based violence, are not deterred enough from committing such horrific crimes against the vulnerable and children. The militarizing of the police and making it professional is essential for the professional criminal justice system and to reinforce trust between communities and the police. Progress has been made, the police in the professionalization through the training of police personnel in attending and dealing with victims of gender-based violence and sexual violence to avoid secondary victimization. As stipulated, government cannot do this alone. The participation of community is the great importance. Municipalities are to be more involved in engaging in the promotion of safe communities. They should ensure the creation of more community safe centers in partnership with all the relevant stakeholders and the improving of the existing one. We must always strengthen community policing forum to ensure fluid relationship between communities and the police. It is important that members of the public feel free and safe to report crimes through the protection of whistleblowers. Centers and police forums allow to a platform where victims of gender-based violence and sexual violence can be reported and victims assisted and linked to the police. However, this requires a concerted program of community building and training of representatives on community police forums and like structures. This includes training representatives to deal with matters of rape, particularly of minor gender-based violence and femicide. Community members must not be afraid to report such crimes. And in case where neighbors or members of the community suspect as an assault of a minor, to easily report such matters to these structures. Community safe centers should also, in the programs, have accessible information regarding rape, teenage, pregnancy, and substance abuse, etc. Their work must be extended to the point that Trained community representatives are able to refer victims to the police and social workers. There is a strong link between substance abuse and domestic violence. It is undisputable that substance abuse is a contributing factor to domestic violence and sexual assault. Research reveals that when a person is under the influence of substances such as drugs and alcohol, they are more likely to have abusive behavior. Undertaking initiatives and campaigns, particularly now, taking into account that we are approaching the festive season where people will be indulging in festivities. We have to raise awareness of substance abuse, particularly to teenagers, and the consequence thereof. The SAPS, Social Crime Prevention Campaign, in partnership with Lifeline and the Liquor Board Authority, is conducting awareness campaign in schools, sensitifying learners about school and substance abuse in a commendable one of engaging and educating our youth about substance and alcohol abuse. Furthermore, initiatives taken by SAPS to visit schools along with the NGO to address learners about issues affecting adolescents such as bullying, gangsterism, and drugs. And teenagers' pregnancy are necessary to tackle issues that face young people. As in many cases in such matters are left unattended, children tend to take such behaviors and partners to adulthood, whereby even in tertiary institutions, we young women like me are raped and abused by their peers on partnership. Crime Prevention Youth Desk should always be encouraged and continue to raise awareness through social media and other platforms such as community radio station and all social networking platforms. We applaud the Safer Schools campaign undertaken by SAPS to raise awareness among the youth. In South Africa, teenage pregnancy is a multifaceted problem with many contributing factors such as poverty, gender inequality, gender-based violence, substance abuse, poor access to contraceptives. It is unable that substance abuse is a contributing factor to teenage pregnancy, as we have to go back to Ruth Moral, that it takes a village to raise a child and that every child is our social responsibility. We cannot watch the future of nature to be washed down to drain. Our young people need positive role models that they can look upon to in society and inspire the youth in a positive way. Role models that promote positive, encourage education and leading a drug-free and alcohol-free lifestyle. It is up to government and the relevant stakeholders to encourage such among our youth. We also as leaders, community leaders, parents and neighbors have to lead by example as children tend to imitate what the elders in society are doing. Ngaphambili singamalungu endlu yowisomthetho wamaphondo sisonke sicela ukulwa obubundlobongela. Sicela nasezicaweni, sicela nakusezinkosini. Ngoba kukho umkhuba womkhwa wokuthiwa hayi culture, ayikho lonto leyo ekuthiwa yi-culture. Siyacela nabo basincedise. Ndakhula ke mna umkhuba ombi phaya emakhaya uhewulwa kusithiwa ayikho into enjalo. Andiyazi ke namhlanje. Mhlali ngaphambili, there is a growing phenomenon in South Africa, thieving people literally from their livelihoods, families, and from our country. Human trafficking is a growing in our country. It is not less often of a sight that we see missing person posted all over our media, children and women disappearing. Human trafficking is a practice of kidnapping people to be forced laborers and for sexual exploitation. They are exported and imported to and from South Africa. Human trafficking is caused by instability, inequality, and conflict. It speaks to us as leaders. It is direct consequence of our social economic challenges that we face as a country. Women and girls are targeted, increasing their risk and levels of safety in our society, and the challenge that they already faced. Although legislation is in place to guard against the trafficking of persons, much more still needs to be done. We have to address the core cause of human trafficking: inequality, socio-economic stability, and conflict. If we are on to truly deal with the phenomenon, we must also build awareness, be involved in civic organizations that help fight human trafficking, report suspicious or any malicious act that may be signed from a victim of perpetrator. We must constantly be aware. We commend the work that is done by civil organizations and SAPS in partnership with various organizations. As my comrade has alluded to, we must strengthen and capacitate neighborhood watch and community policing forum to continue working with law enforcement agents, particularly SAPS, combat human trafficking and sex labor. As the ANC, we maintain and reserve our stance in the protection of all vulnerable persons. We call upon all perpetrators of violence, including sexual violence and human trafficking, to be brought to book and be served with the rule of law. It is our duty as leaders and all members of the society to protect those that are most vulnerable to us. Border control should be reinforced in order to intensifying the fight against human trafficking. We should reinforce our staff, infrastructure, and funding if we are so combat human trafficking. Fighting human trafficking is part of building safer community. If we are to truly achieve social cohesion and a gender-free society, we must all play our part to contribute to our envisioned society. Our constitution provided for the provision of human dignity and the advance of human rights and freedoms. It recognized in the end of human suffrage and the oppression of one of the other. We are viewed to have one of the most liberal constitutions in the world. However, not everyone enjoys equal rights and freedom under it. Everyone has the right to life and to be protected. Our constitution clearly stipulates that no one may be subjected to slavery and forced labor. It is against slavery. Therefore, whenever we confronted with any form of it, it is our duty to uphold constitution and protection those that are oppressed. Nathi singomama masingathengisi ngabantwana bethu. Masingathi xa sivindlala kufike umuntu ongutata ena 53 years athi uyamtshata lo mntana ene 12 years ene 13 years. Ngumkhuba lo, ufuna ukukhuzwa, ufuna ukugxothwa. Children deserve to be sheltered and reserve the right to any information that may be of significance to them. We cannot accept the character in which our society treats our children. As Dr. Nelson Mandela says, open quote, the true character of society is revealed in how it treats its children, close quote. How we are treating the most vulnerable cannot be the character that we want. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Ndongeni. Thank you. That concludes the debate. Honorable members, allow me to take this opportunity to thank the ministers, Minister Dr. Pasha, Honorable Nkwana Mashabane, Deputy Minister Mahaule, Deputy Minister Matale, our honorable MECs from our respective provinces, special delegates, all of you, the House is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Adebongwe. Thank you, Chairperson.
Recording stopped.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye and good night.
Night, night, doctor.
Jason?
I have good.
How are you?
I'm all right, and you, man? I'm still a normal user, so I can't move anywhere at the moment.
Will.
Is
Will,
that okay?
yes, I understand you have all the powers.
Sorry, advocate, I didn't get that. I'm sorry.
I'm saying I understand you've got all the powers.
Ayo, advocate. This power is sitting on my shoulders.
You can switch off the mics. You can remove people.
I think everyone is out. Looks like it.
Just mute the chamber as well, because the sound is going to the chamber.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the interpret chamber is still there.
Yeah.
And
Just
I see YouTube also there.
yeah.
I see the streaming.
There shouldn't be.
I'm sure he won't decline that offer. Apula? Apula, that would be fine. Nah?
Advocate,
That would be.
can you please come again? I didn't get that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd actually like to take you an hour before the meeting starts, just to hold your hand and
You know, one of the quirks of Zoom is that account that you use to create the link.